Stick with me here, you and I are watching Alvin stand in the pouring rain, remembering the exact moment he was officially kicked out of his party. Back in the tavern, he sits right across from his former teammate, while the two of them just stare at the table in absolute awkward silence, staring down at his totally empty mug. Alvin finally gathers enough courage to ask the real reason why they are suddenly cutting him loose. The guy wearing glasses stays completely quiet at first, simply adjusting his frames while the heavy tension between them grows even more uncomfortable. He finally looks up at Alvin, mentioning he has probably guessed the exact reason, and the harsh reality of his current situation truly sinks in. Strolling completely alone through the dark woods, Alvin seriously starts to wonder exactly how many times he has been booted from a party. Keeping his head low, he looks completely exhausted while pushing his way through the wet branches and leaves. But suddenly, an epic glow bursts through the trees, forcing him to shield his eyes from the blinding light. He stands before a massive stone entrance, realizing it is suspiciously quiet. Normally, there is at least one merchant hanging around a spot like this. Alvin figures it makes perfect sense that this area is a total ghost town, considering all the wild rumors floating around. Pulling up his glowing status screen, he admits what he is about to do next is extremely reckless. He quickly double-checks his inventory, making sure his potions, food, and spare gear are ready. Everything is ready to go. Now watch closely, because you and I know his only real option to keep surviving as an adventurer is stepping right inside. It is an incredibly tough spot, but he must bravely face this dungeon boss absolutely solo. Right by the entrance, he spots strange writing on the stone wall, thinking the ancient scripture looks a little suggestive. The text tells a fascinating tale about an old man with a withered body, carrying a rusted holy sword, completely drained of magic. Alvin stands there for a moment, silently thinking it over. It is definitely a bizarre message to find here, but he realizes that standing at the entrance and brooding will not get him anywhere at all. He decides it is finally time to head down those dark stairs, officially kicking off his grand run on the Sunset Cave first floor. Alvin thinks about how his impressive parameters, skills, and magic are all part of the package right now. A solid medium agility boost activates while he smiles, fully knowing all these amazing buffs do not mean anything unless he is inside a dungeon. He admits he does not completely understand the logic behind how it works, but he simply does not care. Flexing as a huge strength buff illuminates his status. Out in the normal world, he is just some random 19-year-old kid with zero prospects, but as a bony hand claws out of the dirt, he knows things are completely different in here. You and I both know that intense look means one thing. I is actually insanely strong. He casually walks past a shattered skeleton like it is nothing, revealing his level 43 status, a high rank most folks never reach until they are ready to retire. He has already pushed incredibly deep into the Sunset Caverns, reaching the 11th floor, where giant lizards are waiting for him. On top of that epic level, he boasts a bunch of combat skills, allowing him to unleash way more explosive power than he normally should be able to, making him the exact kind of guy any party would absolutely beg to have as their vanguard. Alvin simply stands in the center of a massive explosion chain. He is absolutely wrecking everything in his path. Upon reaching the setting sun cave, 17th floor, but there is one major catch to being this deep, because he suddenly locks eyes with a brand new enemy and realizes this guy is definitely a huge problem. A paralyzed slime is sitting directly in his path. Alvin intensely stares it down, noting it is a paralyzed slime, realizing that if he takes too long to defeat it, that paralyzing fluid attack is going to get seriously nasty. Hold up, hit that like button and subscribe for more gems. I dare you to comment that you are loving it. I bet most will not do it. Alright, let us continue. Now. But then, he gets this confident little smirk on his face because these monsters actually drop a massive ton of coins, so he starts planning his move. He knows. Everyone says it is basically impossible to strike their core weak point in one shot. So, his master plan is moving right to the very edge of its range, hitting it with an epic jump attack. He waits patiently for that perfect opening, specifically, when its protective mucus stretches and thins out. Then he locks his aim and lets it rip, swinging his mighty blade up to finish the job. Alvin proudly stands over the defeated slime, fully thinking his brilliant plan worked perfectly. And it truly was just that easy. He immediately starts looking around for the promised loot, wondering what items he is about to pick up, but shockingly realizes there is absolutely nothing there. Can you believe this? You and I just witnessed his true flaw. Turns out, this impossibly bad luck is actually his biggest weakness. Flashing back to the tavern, we see his former teammate casually telling him they have already found another swordsman to permanently take his spot. Alvin just sits there at the wooden bar counter with his head down, looking totally crushed by the devastating news until he tries arguing back. Claiming his high level and having way more skills than anyone else means they absolutely should need him. Let's dive into this wild story. Glasses guy glares, asking if he is seriously flexing those pathetic skills right now. Pointing straight at Alvin, he tells him to open that shiny status window and see for himself. Alvin starts sweating bullets while the guy demands to know what sits at the bottom of his precious list. Our main guy just stares blankly at his glowing status screen in total shock. Right at the absolute bottom lies his ultimate curse. His horrible drop rate decrease skill literally slashes item chances by 80% on every single monster takedown. He reflects on how nobody chooses their starting skills. If you get lucky enough to unlock a ton, there is almost always a huge catch waiting. For poor Alvin, that catch is a negative skill that completely ruins his adventurer life. He breaks down exactly how it works, using a bunch of common monsters. Showing how terrible it is, he explains that a 10% drop chance practically drops to absolute zero the second he lands the final hit. While normal adventurers pack their bags after just a few easy wins, Alvin must conquer a literal mountain of enemies for one single measly item. Now watch closely, because here is the twist. The harder he fights to carry his team, the less gold his party actually brings home. Since he basically acts as a massive tax on profits, Alvin finally accepts he is a complete liability. It makes sense that every single party he joins eventually ends up hating him. Standing alone in the dust, he finally accepts that getting booted was bound to happen eventually. And honestly, he is totally fine with it. He remembers leaving the family farm to become an epic adventurer at 14, spending endless months doing intense solo training to catch up. He grinded relentlessly because he had to become strong enough to counter those massive skill downsides, and the crazy part is, it actually paid off. Thanks to his bonus traits, his level skyrocketed insanely fast, pushing him to a point where he was finally strong enough to join up with real parties. He definitely did not stop at physical training, though. He spent countless sleepless nights analyzing his weakness to find a loophole. He even perfectly adjusted his combat movement, ensuring he stayed in the exact spot so his teammates could easily grab the finishing strike. Looking back, Alvin knows he put in an absolutely insane amount of effort, but the harsh reality of it all is even worse than he imagined. Despite the fading shadows of teammates left behind, Alvin keeps his head up, knowing for a fact he worked harder than anybody else to survive. Rubbing his face, he realizes he cannot overcome the giant handicap from his negative trait, and it is truly starting to crush his spirit. He just stands alone in the dark, letting out a heavy sigh. But wait, you're gonna want to hear this. Wishing his hard work actually mattered. A sudden high-pitched scream echoes through the dark tunnel, making him freeze instantly. Looking around, he wonders if it was just a random monster, but quickly realizes it was absolutely a real person in serious trouble. He tracks the noise to a wide-open path right ahead, sneaking closer, only to find a helpless girl completely surrounded by a massive horde of terrifying wild enemies. Knowing he was completely right, he takes a closer look at their utterly gross yellow skin. This means they are yellow goblins. Alvin knows whenever they swarm in groups, this gigantic, they become a huge problem depending on your current level. Wasting absolutely zero time, he draws his trusty sword and sprints straight into the battle. Alvin is totally stunned finding a lone girl out here by herself. Based on her fancy gear, she is a priest who is completely over her head. He jumps in, slashing through monsters to guard her. Staying super focused, he asks if she can move or lacks mana. Still totally shaken, the girl looks up and says she can. Alvin tells her to jump up so they can move, adding they desperately need to regroup before more of those awful things show up. She immediately starts apologizing, feeling so terrible for causing him this much trouble. Alvin tells her not to stress it, because true adventurers are supposed to protect each other. The girl just stares in awe, her entire face turning bright red while processing his epic rescue. But Alvin has zero time. He tells her to heal up quickly, turning toward the cave and warning her to focus only on staying safe for now. He says they must move fast. Secretly, though, he is worried because her party is absolutely nowhere to be found. Charging into the pack, he tears through goblins, striking so fast, they do not get a single second to react before getting fully knocked out. Alvin stands tall over the first few enemies he just wrecked. And trust me, you and I are just getting started. He perfectly times his parry skill, clears the space with the huge swing, and dares them to see if numbers actually win. Stick with me, he yells. Never to underestimate a guy who was a hardcore solo player. Alvin goes absolutely all out. He activates his iron cutter skill, tearing straight through the goblins, instantly dropping 2 of them with one massive, heavy swing. He immediately spots one more, loudly shouting to the girl that the last monster approaches her. She completely refuses to freeze, bravely swinging her heavy mace and smashing the goblin down. She is actually smiling about it, happily cheering. She finally got one. Alvin is totally shocked. Moving on, they locate a designated safe zone hidden deep inside the dungeon. The girl bows down, thanking him for the rescue, politely introducing herself as a cheerful priestess named Cockle. Alvin gives her a super friendly wave, explaining his name is Alvin and he is just a swordsman. They finally sit to rest, and Alvin gets straight to the point, asking why she is even exploring completely alone. He gets a really bad feeling here, nervously asking if something terrible happened to her previous party. Cockle quickly clears things up, clarifying that her party totally did not get defeated at all. Turns out, she has been adventuring entirely on her own since the absolute beginning. Alvin cannot believe it, exclaiming, he has never heard of a solo priest before. She just gives a little smile, awkwardly admitting she could not find anyone to join her. Alvin firmly says that is still no excuse, because going into dangerous dungeons completely alone is incredibly reckless. He starts explaining something else, but Cockle totally shuts him down, simply saying no. She moves in extremely close, making a flustered Alvin jump backwards and yell to wait a minute. Here is where it gets wild. She opens a status window, claiming seeing it himself is way faster. Alvin instantly gets quite worried for her. He mentions she really should not show private stats to strangers. However, she does not care at all, saying she does not mind. Alvin stares directly at the glowing screen in complete disbelief, his mind frantically racing to process this impossible sight. He practically jumps out of his skin, frantically yelling she is level 80, while Cockle quietly stands there holding the screen. He covers his face, feeling incredibly awkward, seriously questioning if she even needed him to save her in the first place. Cockle immediately panics, insisting he really did save her. It was her very first time getting ambushed solo, and she was completely ready to quit. She then quickly changes the subject, asking him to take a much closer look at the skills listed on her status. Alvin starts counting them up, realizing she has a massive ton, and Cockle casually mentions there are 11 total. He notices amazing things like MP boost and healing magic, thinking they are completely top tier, but spots something weird. He nervously tries reading out those last few names, but gets totally stumped, honestly admitting he has never ever heard of those. Cockle looks quite discouraged, quietly telling him those are actually negative skills. That massive bombshell hits Alvin hard. He just stands completely frozen, struggling to wrap his mind around having terrible skills that actively hurt the user. Cockle looks down with a heavy expression as the skill name, Decapitator's usurper, suddenly appears. She explains this very specific negative skill is actually the exact reason her player level shot up so incredibly high. Alvin cannot believe his own ears, loudly asking how being level 80 could possibly result from a bad skill. Cockle stands there calmly, telling him that the way it operates is actually quite simple. But whenever anyone else in her party defeats a monster, the game system totally acts like she was the one who won. Alvin looks visibly confused, genuinely asking if the people actually doing the hard fighting still get their experience and loot. Cockle looks incredibly bummed out, explaining that normally they completely do. But there is a catch. She explains the massive problem actually involves the special bonus granted for finishing an enemy off. Alvin ponders the final strike for a quick second until it finally perfectly clicks inside his head. You see it too, right? Since the finisher gets triple the normal experience, she accidentally steals it all. Alvin looks intensely stressed, trying to wrap his mind around this, asking if that crazy skill basically lets her hog all the earned experience for herself. Cockle starts breaking down the crazy math. If 2 swordsmen and 1 mage defeat a monster without any priest helping out in the fight, the system normally splits all rewards. But her usurper skill literally acts like a vacuum. It absolutely sucks up those victory bonuses and experience points, leaving her whole party with literally nothing. Alvin sits completely back, suddenly realizing how terrible that actually is. If she keeps accidentally stealing that vital growth, the rest of her team never levels up. He finally gets the entire picture, stating it makes total sense why her previous party decided to forcefully kick her out. Alvin tries finding a smart workaround, asking why she does not simply join a group focused on gathering items instead of strictly hunting. He totally figures for a top-tier healer like her, finding some team that prioritizes safety over fast leveling should not be a problem. That is where we leave it. Cockle shakes her head, sighing that unfortunately, it is not simple. Let us jump right in. She reveals her head taker skill holds a massive, game-changing flaw for her. Alvin is completely caught off guard, immediately asking her if this crazy skill seriously has even more terrible drawbacks. Cockle drops the harsh truth. If her teammates have any experience or loot boosts, her skill completely blocks them. They literally do not count for anything while they are out hunting together. She visually breaks it down to explain everything. It completely cancels out any loot buffs, and the stats prove it. The user steals all the credit and takedowns every single time. Cockle heavily sighs, adding that beyond stealing experience points, it ruins any helpful skills her allies use. Looking completely crushed, she sadly admits to Alvin that it is honestly just an absolutely terrible and broken skill to be stuck with. Alvin falls silent. He truly wants to say something encouraging to cheer her up, but Cockle interrupts him, apologizing for dumping all of this heavy and depressing information on him so incredibly fast right now. Standing by the cave entrance, she pauses for a moment. Looking really nervous, she finally decides to ask him one last very important question. She gently asks Alvin if he knows anything about their crazy next destination. Cockle brings up a rumor. The Sunset Cave boss supposedly drops an item that erases skills. That is the entire reason she traveled all this way. Though she sadly admits that fighting this boss completely alone feels totally impossible now. Now watch this. While she laughs nervously, Alvin completely freezes up. He realizes he missed something huge. Everything finally clicks into place. Right here. If her powers completely cancel out, drop rate boosts whenever she lands the finishing blow. Alvin completely loses his mind. Covering his mouth, he follows this wild logic to the end. He desperately wonders if her crazy skill might actually cancel out his own terrible drop rate, down, penalty, and fix his biggest problem. He struggles to stay calm and breathe, while Cockle just keeps on talking. She explains her tough situation, promising to seriously improve her skills. But she completely understands if he does not want to officially join her party today. She suddenly gets an incredibly determined look right now, promising that if she gets that one specific item, he can happily take every single other awesome reward they manage to find along the entire rest of their journey. Alvin just stands there in absolute silence for a moment before letting out a heavy sigh. Cockle keeps her head bowed low and practically begs him to just listen closely. Knowing she is asking for too much, but desperately hoping he considers it. Suddenly, Alvin yells her name at the absolute top of his lungs, getting fiercely close to her face with extremely intense eyes that show he is not messing around right now, and dramatically begging her to officially form a new party with him immediately. Cockle totally loses her mind. She asks if he heard a single word she just said. Honestly, it turns out he was barely paying any attention to her. The brand new duo marches deep into the 17th floor of the massive cave. I know what you are thinking. Cockle agrees, wondering if fighting separately, but staying super close, was the much smarter move. But Alvin tells her to completely ignore those negative skill effects. He confidently asks her to just stick right by his side for the next few battles. Cockle says she does not really mind doing that, but she is clearly still a bit worried about how this crazy plan will go. She looks up, asking if he needs her to cast some support buffs on him first, and Alvin quickly starts to give his answer. Actually, Alvin is completely spaced out. He wanders along dazed, emotionally repeating the word buff. Having real teammates finally makes this poor outcast feel safe and loved for the very first time in his life. He keeps blushing hard, realizing that being in a real party is seriously the greatest thing ever. But Cockle suddenly screams his name at the absolute top of her lungs, shattering his happy little daydream immediately. Alvin tries playing it cool. He explains they are on the middle floors where support effects should not matter. But Cockle is absolutely panicking. She points straight ahead, screaming at him to just look at the massive threat directly in front. A gigantic paralyzed slime blocks their entire path. Alvin just sighs heavily, realizing they must handle these annoying things all over again today. Instead of running away, he bravely draws his sword. He tells her this is actually the perfect chance for a test. He charges forward with a massive swing. Hoping his wild idea works, he desperately yells out, "Please." He gets a super intense look, praying to the heavens this fight finally proves his crazy theory. Alvin stands there as the slashed monster suddenly explodes into a massive shower of shiny silver coins. Cockle is totally hyped up in the background, cheering loudly and praising him for finishing it in just one hit. Looking completely flustered and sweaty, he tells her he cannot be sure about his crazy theory yet. He needs more proof. Moving deeper, a pack of yellow goblins shows up. Alvin makes quick work of them, leading to a very specific antidote bottle dropping as loot right at his feet. Cockle picks it up, saying it works exactly like a paralysis potion. She mentions how incredibly rare it is, but Alvin is totally locked in. "Trust me, you. And I want to see him try this one more time. Stick with me." He battles those electric spiders right now. Once the smoke clears, he holds a glowing sphere, and Cockle totally freaks out over this legendary thunder orb. Staring right at him, she says his golden touch gets crazy drops. Meanwhile, Alvin is sweating and stammering hard, desperately trying to understand this wild situation. He genuinely wonders if he has some absolutely insane drop luck. Cockle stands completely blank, silently wondering why he even asks that question when the answer is ridiculously obvious. Suddenly, Alvin turns and shouts her name extremely loud. Cockle jumps in total panic, immediately apologizing while asking if she was too loud. But Alvin cuts her off, asking her to join his party again, even though he literally just asked her earlier today. Cockle acts all smug and hums to herself. She reminds him they are currently partying together. Alvin completely agrees, but then suddenly drops into a massive bow right before her, begging her right there. Alvin gets absolutely serious and looks directly into her wide eyes. He boldly declares that he wants her to stay by his side forever now. Cockle instantly freezes, face turning bright red as she stares in absolute shock. He keeps pushing, dramatic as ever, claiming he cannot even survive without her around. Losing her mind entirely, Cockle desperately asks if he is actually being serious. Alvin notes that since she showed her personal stats, she basically revealed absolutely everything already. Panicking hard, Cockle wonders when that happened. Looking completely dizzy and exhausted, he reminds her they literally met just today. Getting fully serious again, Alvin leans in, firmly declaring their chance encounter was absolute destiny. Blushing red, Cockle looks genuinely moved, quietly admitting he makes a brilliant point. Acting super shy, she says they hardly know each other, but Alvin stares blankly. He questions her logic, then suddenly realizes he entirely forgot one crucial detail. Keeping things totally real, he nervously admits he possesses a negative skill as well. Surprised, Cockle watches him open his status window, hearing him say it is probably less rare than hers. Watch closely. His huge drop rate down penalty suddenly pops up. Cockle absolutely loses it, screaming that if his skill says it is special, then it is definitely rare. Looking absolutely horrified by his terrible luck, Cockle yells at Alvin, desperately asking how he even stayed alive as an adventurer. Taking it super casually, he admits his old party recently kicked him out, leaving Cockle looking completely drained. She finally puts the pieces together, asking if he traveled here specifically to clear it. Alvin finishes her sentence, explaining he needed a skill-deleting boss drop, exactly like her. So, confused, Cockle wonders why items drop normally now. Seeing tons of shiny coins falling everywhere around Alvin, hyped up, he shouts she is totally right, praising her incredible decapitator's usurpation skill for changing everything today. Absolutely horrified, Cockle denies it completely, swearing she definitely deserves 0 credit for something crazy like that. Losing her mind, she screams. Her skill remains basically useless, causing everyone nothing but an absolute ton of trouble. Focusing back on the logistics, she notes he missed the last kill bonus entirely. Looking back, Alvin casually agrees with her, admitting he honestly got 0 bonus points at all. Alvin continues, explaining his old teammates' drop rate boosts always failed around him, making Cockle yell back that he just proved her exact point perfectly. She hates causing him any more unnecessary pain. You saw this coming, right? It hits her. She asks if his skill actually failed to activate. Alvin confirms it definitely failed, getting incredibly fired up and shouting she is completely right. As the reality kicks in, thrilled, he yells that his annoying negative skill finally stayed quiet for the very first time ever. This means staying in her party lets him finally fight like a perfectly normal swordsman, stopping his terrible bad luck from completely ruining absolutely everything. Taken aback, Cockle realizes it is just a matter of perspective for a unique guy like him, but she wonders if she only noticed his extreme situation simply because of her own uniquely crazy skill. Still confused, she stares at him, asking if that forever together talk simply meant they had amazing party compatibility. Hyped up, Alvin yells yeah, insisting he definitely wants to stay together in a party long after. Leaving this dungeon, Cockle stands there looking totally stunned, like her entire brain just completely shut down. Alvin asks what is wrong, but she says forget it. Trust me, you want to see what happens next. Come along with me. She gets this gentle expression, saying she is genuinely thrilled because she never imagined her powers actually helping anyone. Alvin gets totally serious for a second. He starts to say something, but then goes completely quiet. Looking away, he admits he understands her hesitation. His awful luck totally wrecked his past parties, so he gets it. He tells her there is 0 pressure to commit to any long-term team-up right now. He simply asks if she will stick around just to clear this current dungeon. Cockle thinks about it, reaching out her hand. She tells him she understands, totally, agreeing to team up just for a little bit. They officially shake hands on it, both smiling and saying it is awesome to finally work together. Pushing deeper into Sunset Cave, they hit the 24th floor, where Alvin absolutely shreds through monsters. Pulling up his menu, he is completely floored. He has literally never seen his inventory filled to the top with loot before. Alvin calls out to Cockle, asking her to help gather the epic loot drops. She flashes a huge smile, saying she is completely on it, It is super obvious this crazy progress is only happening because of Cockle's unique skills. Watching her work, Alvin realizes she has become a teammate he simply cannot survive without, even though their meeting was a total accident. Suddenly, Cockle looks completely distracted, like she is lost in thought for a second. Alvin catches this shift immediately. He checks in, asking if she feels down or is just exhausted from the climb. Looking her way, he suggests they take a quick break right here. Surprised he even noticed, she quickly replies that she is actually doing perfectly fine. Alvin stands his ground, firmly saying her name so she actually listens. Looking straight into her eyes, he reminds her they are a party now. If something is bothering her, she needs to be totally honest. His expression turns dead serious. He tells her they should simply focus on fixing what they can today. Blushing hard, Cockle looks away. She finally admits the person on her mind is someone named Lyra. Watch closely, she gets caught off guard, absolutely amazed as she realizes just how impressive he is. She tells Alvin it is absolutely wild how he keeps one-shotting monsters so easily lately. Looking up with pure curiosity, Cockle asks if he is secretly wielding some kind of insanely powerful, legendary sword. Alvin pulls his blade out slightly. He smiles, saying it is actually just a standard sword for his current level. Looking at his weapon, he mentions that even super tough slimes fall instantly. This grabs Cockle's attention as he finally reveals his big combat secret. He explains that hitting their exact weak points makes most mid-floor monsters drop instantly. But he totally gives her credit too. Having her awesome strength buff active makes a massive difference. Cockle just stares at him like he is crazy. Hitting that perfectly every single time is absolutely insane. Alvin looks back with a cheeky grin, telling Cockle he is definitely taking that as a massive compliment. He explains how hard he has worked so his skills never hold anyone back, especially after getting kicked from past groups. Casually, he admits he just wants to look cool for her, making Cockle blush like absolutely crazy. Still smiling, Alvin says he feels incredibly lucky to finally meet true companions like them. He vows to work hard so they never give up on him for being weak. But Cockle just stands right there with a completely blank expression. You saw that too, right? She is totally speechless. Sighing, she says it is what it is. Alvin stands there confused, right until Cockle spots something sparkling in the distance and asks what that could be. A treasure chest, tucked against the wall. Walking over, Cockle stays super cautious, literally asking the box if it is a mimic in disguise. Alvin is not too worried though. He steps forward, saying he will open it himself. Alvin tells Cockle to stand back. If the chest is a trap, he will handle all the dangerous countermeasures himself. Following his lead, she gives a quick, respectful nod, saying yes, sir. Reaching for the lid, Alvin admits he would hesitate solo. But having an awesome healer right behind him, it makes him feel 100% more confident. The chest creaks open, revealing a single, mysterious scroll neatly tied with a string. Grabbing it, Alvin wonders if this scroll is the proof they need to confirm those wild boss drop rumors. Reading further, the text explains this crazy item actually causes the user to lose a talent. It is a minus item. Since his skills are already nullified, he almost ignores it. But then it clicks their entire goal was finding something that deletes skills. They found exactly what they needed. Meanwhile, Cockle just watches him, softly saying his name. Alvin notices her acting quiet. What do we think? Alright, stick with me here. He looks totally confused until she beams a massive smile and brings up the ultimate boss drop. She insists that if they uncover a rare item meant for just one person, Alvin absolutely has to take it for himself. Alvin just stands there. He is absolutely amazed by her surprisingly selfless offer. He wonders out loud where this sudden kindness came from, and she simply replies that she has been thinking about it for days. She explains that since this rare drop has such wild and mysterious effects, she figured it might actually help him out. She points out she still owes him deeply for saving her life before. Hearing this, Alvin softly says her name, finally realizing she was not just feeling super down today, she was actually worried about his future this entire time. He admits she is right about the item, but then smiles warmly, joking that he would probably just sell a super rare drop like that anyway. Cockle looks up at him with massive, curious eyes, quietly wondering what he is thinking. Alvin suddenly gets super serious for a second, explaining that beyond just grinding for experience, he honestly just wants true, loyal friends he can gladly go on epic adventures with. He explains having her around makes his negative skills manageable. Besides, his level is already high enough. He gently asks if things are not just absolutely perfect, exactly the way they are right now. Cockle gives a soft, grateful smile, and warmly thanks him, but hints that he might only feel that way for the time being. She grips her magic staff tightly, clearly preparing herself to reveal something much more serious. Now watch closely. If a person's hard-earned experience points keep vanishing, they will obviously grow bitter because their massive effort is showing zero actual results. Looking down sadly, she whispers, "It has always been this way." That hits hard, making Alvin finally understand the harsh, undeniable reality. Alvin suddenly recalls a wise old man explaining that negative skills are deeply tied to emotions. It was an old childhood story he heard, back when he didn't quite grasp its true, hidden meaning. Looking back, he missed the weight of it back then, but everything is clicking for him right now. It focuses on deep jealousy, dark suspicion, and hating yourself. Those heavy feelings drag down the skill holder and absolutely everyone else around them too. He begins thinking that maybe he once made the exact same devastated face Cockle is making today. He stands silently for a moment before firmly calling out Cockle's name to grab her full attention. He asks her to listen, speaking as an adventurer who has been exactly where she is. "I know what you are thinking." Huge moment. He drops to one knee, swearing eternal loyalty. Cockle just stands there, totally speechless, while he nervously waits. Alvin stays frozen, looking completely panicked, frantically wondering what he should even do after that epic speech. He starts sweating, worrying. He just selfishly rambled, without considering her delicate feelings. He awkwardly points out that there really is not any rule forcing only one person to use the awesome loot they find. He rubs his neck, casually, telling Cockle they should just worry about those little details once they actually grab it. This finally makes Cockle give a gentle smile, realizing he is right. She looks down and sweetly apologizes to Alvin, feeling awful for saying weird things and ruining the mood. But Alvin frantically waves his hands, cheerfully insisting she did not say anything wrong at all. Flashing a kind smile, he clears the awkward air, figuring it is time to resume the mission. So, he suggests moving on, and Cockle is totally ready to head deeper inside. As they walk, she watches him, realizing he is just a genuinely straightforward, amazing guy. Cockle thinks back to the moment Alvin just suddenly appeared. Right on this floor, she notes. He is an experienced adventurer with a truly golden heart. She starts genuinely wondering if an awesome guy like him would actually stick around to help. And before she realizes it, she is already completely opening up about her minus skill. For a second, she looks up, thinking this meeting might be magical fate. But she stops herself, worrying. The situation just feels a little too perfectly convenient. She finds it hard to believe anyone would truly party with a minus skill holder like her, worrying it only happened because they are trapped in the same mess right now. She tells herself there's zero guarantee he won't abandon her later, just like everyone else. Looking down, she feels the heavy burden of the title she painfully carries. Suddenly, Alvin's voice echoes in her mind, promising he will absolutely, never, ever betray her. The darkness breaks. She realizes she might actually trust again. So what do you and I make of this? With a guy like him around, things might finally change. But her thoughts shatter when a massive noise catches her completely off guard, making her eyes go wide. She screams his name as a heavy rumbling violently starts. "All right, jump in with me," because Alvin immediately senses a nearby battle, and something about this whole vibe feels totally off. He tells her they really need to go investigate. He asks her to follow his lead. Cockle totally agrees, sprinting right behind him as they absolutely rush toward all that loud noise. They freeze, spotting a massive golem pack. Alvin wonders why they are grouped up. Looking past the monsters, he spots trapped adventurers hiding further back. Alvin checks the chaos, asking if that group really cannot handle these enemies, especially as a huge stone golem stomps forward, shaking the entire ground. He jumps straight in, loudly yelling that he will draw max aggro to help them. Cockle completely panics, begging him to wait for her buffs. But he is already moving, shouting out his iron cutter skill as he goes to strike. The heavy blade slams into the rocky leg with a crash, but it barely leaves a single scratch. He grits his teeth, letting out a frustrated shout, seeing zero damage. He realizes this monster is way tougher than expected as it prepares to fiercely swing back at him. Cockle finally catches up, thanking him for stalling while she starts casting her magic. Alvin tells her to hurry with those buffs, since the monster is already switching targets. Cockle locks in. Now watch closely, because they are facing an emerald golem, a monster that is basically a walking brick wall against sword users. Alvin knows Iron Slicer lacks damage, so he uses the move just to stay super mobile, faking out the monster with crazy high speed. Cockle watches him, totally impressed by his lightning-fast battle reflexes. But she starts worrying since the battle moves way faster than she can finish her chant. She realizes to clear these golems without getting crushed, she must skip basic strength buffs for something way more powerful, even if the magic fades super fast. Gripping her magic staff tightly, she absolutely knows that with Alvin's talent, this risky move is their best shot. But it is more than strategy, as she watches with completely clear, determined eyes. She is not hunting for praise. She just wants to match Alvin's pure effort with her strongest magic. Alvin leaps up to strike, getting close. He notices his attacks are actually piercing straight through its tough armor, totally mind blown by how well this works. He shouts that he has never seen magic buffs this insanely strong. Swinging his sword down, he realizes this massive power lets him easily target and destroy the monster's weak spots. Slamming his weapon into a direct hit, the entire massive creature shatters into a million tiny pieces from that one epic strike. Alvin smoothly skids back, landing on his feet like an absolute boss. He checks his blade. You and I both realize magic ignoring resistance is wild, saving them precious time. He looks over, telling Kakeru he is counting on her, and she is totally ready to keep fighting. She flashes a huge smile, sweetly thanking him for that awesome vote of confidence. Kakeru looks up, smiling huge, saying his aim on those weak spots was perfect. But before he can even enjoy that sweet compliment, a massive explosion suddenly goes off nearby. Alvin shouts in pure surprise as someone yells from across the battlefield, telling them to hang in there because epic backup is on the way to help. Alvin starts replying, but gets totally cut off by another golem moving in. His eyes go wide, realizing he has zero time to stand around chatting. He has to focus on this insane fight right now. So, he yells back that he cannot hear a word over this crazy noise. Instead of waiting, he drives his sword deep into the golem's chest, flashing bright magic everywhere. He skids back across the dirt to create breathing room. He thinks that if this monster survives a hit like that, he really has to step his game up. He takes a stance, ready to push forward. Not done yet. Two more giant rock monsters appear, and Alvin prepares to take them both down. Alvin delivers one final, absolutely massive strike, blowing those golems into dust. The dust settles. He checks the rubble, asking if that is everyone. Kakeru smiles warmly, telling him he did some incredible work out there. Alvin mentions how absolutely insane that buff felt, but then he checks on her, asking if her mana is okay after burning through so much magic. Kakeru gives a polite nod, saying she is fine, and Alvin admits he is genuinely impressed. He notes the buff stayed active until the very last monster fell, proving just how amazing a high-level player truly is. Kakeru looks up, searching for words, but she just ends up blushing bright red and letting out a super cute laugh instead. Alvin spots their mysterious helper looking extremely cheerful. And trust me, with level stats that high, We definitely do not need to worry about his safety at all. Stick with me, guys. The traveler says a quick goodbye, just glad Alvin is safe before heading off. Alvin and Kokoro walk up to the mysterious girl, asking if she is completely by herself. Looking super awkward, she shyly admits that she should probably just apologize for now. We jump right back to the 24th floor safe zone of Rakkyo Jutsu Cave where she was resting. Alvin is so confused, asking about cheese, while Kokoro just happily echoes his exact words back. The girl quickly points out that even though the map completely hides it, the rough walls and ceilings here actually cause a massive golem to get completely wedged right into the solid rocks. Kokoro spots the stuck monster. The girl explains that without ranged moves, these emerald golems are basically just sitting ducks. She cheerfully adds that their drops are super valuable, and she can easily farm them using her magic. Alvin finally connects the dots. He asks if she was rounding up all those giant golems. He feels totally awful about it, but she just laughs it off, saying she was only passing through the area anyway. Standing among the thick vines, Alvin repeats her exact words, questioning if she is genuinely just passing through. He quickly follows up, asking if she actually plans on fighting the Sunset Cave boss all alone. Kokoro looks so confused. The mage just gives a super nervous laugh, promising that is definitely not the case. She points out the obvious truth. Being a mage is definitely not a class meant for solo runs. Honestly, she totally knows she could never survive the deeper floors without a really solid party backing her up. Alvin nods, agreeing. It makes sense. But suddenly, the cheerful mage gets a totally serious look. Now pay attention, she explains. She desperately needs that boss drop to cure a terrible negative skill she is stuck with. This heavy news absolutely shocks Kokoro. The girl then glances over curiously, asking if Alvin and Kokoro are just in a temporary party together for this specific dungeon run. Looking incredibly proud, Alvin explains that he actually scouted her when they met on the 17th floor. Melina glances at Kokoro and giggles, teasing Alvin that picking up girls like this is a super bold move. Alvin totally ignores the teasing. Calling her name, he asks Melina to explain more about that thing. She looks surprised for a split second before realizing he is asking about her negative skill. Looking away sadly, she reveals the dark curse is called the Blessing of the Jealous God. Melina explains the specific skill makes joining parties an impossible dream, which is exactly why she explores all out here alone. Alvin asks what the skill actually does, and Melina playfully teases him for being so interested. She points out the skill is harmless alone. It only really ruins things when she joins a group. It sounds amazing at first. Everyone gets a 10% stat boost, but Alvin thinks that sounds like a weirdly suspicious buff. And Melina warns the actual downside is way worse. You saw this coming, right? Every single monster takedown makes their stats permanently drop by 3%. Melina explains this counts as interference. It just keeps stacking with every single takedown. A stunned Alvin asks if it really stacks endlessly. He does the math. 40 takedowns means 120% drop. He absolutely panics. Even with the boost, their power could literally hit zero. Melina just laughs, totally agreeing. The whole thing is completely insane. She gets specific, saying the brutal calculations are based on current stat values. She explains that by takedown 3, the buff is gone. By the 4th, you are officially weaker than when you started. The massive penalty really starts hurting from takedown for onwards. Even starting with 100 strength, the numbers just rapidly fall off. Melina says 40 overlapping stacks equals a 70% reduction. Alvin is totally speechless while she adds that the awful debuff effects expire over time. They will not all hit simultaneously. Kokoro just watches them. Melina finishes by saying she ran the numbers, and it is actually pretty rare for drops to ruin a fight. Alvin thinks for a second. He decides that if that is true, the skill might not be that bad after all. But Melina immediately stops him. The part that actually ruins parties is the third effect. Alvin's head completely starts spinning. He cannot believe there is even more to this crazy mess. Melina tells him to forget that 10% boost and just listen. The third effect basically steals the takedown bonus and shares it with everyone else. She pictures 2 swordsmen and a mage. That is where we leave it. Stick with me here. Beating monsters without a priest means the guy landing the hits gets nothing, while experience and bonuses just magically go to other members. This leaves the poor fighter completely behind, while the rest of the party grabs rewards for doing absolutely nothing. Melina points out that since stats drop and bonuses vanish after every kill, she really wonders how any frontline fighter would react to that. Alvin guesses they would probably just force everyone else to get the final kills. And Melina quickly tells him he is exactly right. Melina continues explaining, saying that because of how her unique skill actually works, frontline fighters just stop getting kills on purpose. She looks down, admitting this creates a super dangerous environment where accidents always happen, something she has unfortunately seen way too many times. The wild logic of their world is totally weird. A massive snake can tower over a party, but losing health does not make someone weaker right away. So, no matter how flashy or brutal the damage looks inside a dungeon, it never slows a fighter down at all, which is why Alvin knows this is just how things are, even if the real reason behind this system remains a total mystery to everyone. Watch closely. A brave fighter gets crushed by a massive snake, his health dropping straight down to 27. Yet, he acts like nothing is wrong until the exact second that number hits 0. And suddenly, the bright light just completely leaves his eyes. This world has absolutely zero middle ground. If that health bar bottoms out, the person is completely wiped out, leading to the harsh reality that there is no revival. No magic or items can ever bring someone back once they cross that final line. Melina says that watching teammates bicker over who gets the final blow on a fading monster is the absolute worst part of the job. Melina explains she is a rearguard mage who needs time to cast spells, looking totally stressed as she thinks back to how her old teammates would constantly argue right in front of monsters, making it completely impossible for her to cover them. She mentions how they almost got eliminated all the time because the front line guys were always attacking so incredibly recklessly, and things always ended badly, with her eventually getting kicked out of the group once everyone got super frustrated, though sometimes she would just choose to walk away and leave the party entirely on her own. Before things got uglier, Alvin takes all this in and asks if that is exactly why she decided being a solo adventurer was the better way to go. Melina admits she just did not want to end up eliminated in some random accident caused by her own skill, but she clearly knows that even if it is better than a terrible team, going solo is still a huge risk for her. And that is exactly why she started looking into the rumors about this place called Sunset Cave. She explains that the boss here drops a magical item that actually erases a person's skills, which is why they are mapping a route to find it. You and I see it. Her skill is a total game over trap, but he just cannot shake the feeling that something is still off about their situation. He thinks about how he genuinely does not care about getting credit for eliminations, or if the sweet rewards from his work get moved to someone else. But then, he catches himself, and suddenly realizes that with the way their party is set up right now, the person actually getting all the credit would be Kokoru. She is currently giving off a terrifying vibe, explaining she is just farming golems to stack up cash, so she can hire professional help for the boss later. Melina agrees that using money is the only solid way to keep teammates from causing trouble, so she plans on staying a solo player until she has funds. But right then, a loud voice cuts through the air, shouting Melina's name. Cockerel lunges forward and desperately begs her to join the party, admitting she was listening to the whole story. Melina completely loses her cool, stammering and asking if the girl really heard everything she just confessed. Cockerel warns Melina that things will get dangerous for her if the swordswoman starts hesitating to attack, making Alvin quickly chime in to say he gets it, while Melina nervously tries to set boundaries by shouting that this arrangement is definitely not okay and is only happening for right now. Cockerel will not let up, grabbing Melina and insisting they just do it as a quick test for now. So Melina finally snaps and gives in, though she cannot help but wonder what the actual deal is with this kid. The group moves deep into the dungeon, reaching the 24th floor of the Cave of the Setting Sun. Melina looks around the rocky area and asks what the actual goal is for them being out here, and Cockerel explains that her main goal is simply to see if this party can actually take down a monster together. Suddenly, Alvin stares at his status screen in absolute shock, yelling that all of his stats just shot up. Melina asks if he is trying to level grind, noting that even non-combat classes get some steady bonuses. Melina looks over with a pretty, surprised look on her face. She starts saying that efficiency is totally different now, but Cockerel quickly cuts in. Leveling is not the main point here, and she gets 0 bonuses anyway. Seriously, what do you and I make of this wild kid? Just as they are talking, stick with me here. A massive shadow slides across the rocks, and someone screams a warning. It is finally here. Alvin stands totally fearless, quickly identifying this ugly monster as a tentacle plant. But right before he moves, Melina steps up. She tells him to just let her handle it because she wants to end this fight fast. Striking an epic pose, she levels her staff, gathering massive magical energy to trigger a spell. Alvin completely loses his mind, screaming about how absolutely insane it is that she finished chanting that fast. The plant gets caught perfectly inside the center of her magic, and Melina casually watches a massive energy blast hit. A blinding explosion completely fills the cave, instantly wiping out that ugly monster right where it stands. Alvin stands there, jaw dropped and totally blown away. He literally cannot believe she obliterated that thing in one hit. Melina just plays it incredibly cool, reminding him she is level 38 and saying it is easy hitting an elemental weakness. Cockle suddenly pipes up with a question. Melina turns around to listen as the young priestess nervously asks exactly what kind of elemental magic she can actually use. Melina does not even hesitate, explaining her main focus is all 5 elements. She has already mastered every single spell available for her level. Plus, she even picked up some extra ones on the side. Hearing this makes Per Cockle completely break. She is totally spiraling over someone having 5 main attributes plus such a high level. Alvin sees her freaking out and asks what the big deal is, telling Cockle she is pretty awesome herself. But Cockle explains that having so many attributes means an insane variety of spells, and every single one has a totally different chant. She looks completely overwhelmed. I know what you are thinking. That is crazy. Because as a mage levels up, the memorization absolutely skyrockets. Alvin thinks about how mages usually narrow their focus down based on their staff or their skills. Then he remembers his old party leader only had 3 attributes. And that guy was supposed to be an absolute pro. Cockle is still freaking out, screaming that Melina must possess a genius level memory to handle 5 attributes plus those extra spells. Alvin quickly tells both of them to hold on a second. Looking totally confused, he asks if mages actually have to memorize all of those chants entirely by heart. Melina totally ignores his shock, showing off her complicated status screen to explain she has 5 different attribute enhancement skills. She says she absolutely hated the idea of having dead skills, so she worked incredibly hard to memorize every single available spell. Cockle admits she gets overwhelmed just managing her priest magic. Seeing Alvin's totally blank face makes it super clear this young priestess is in pure awe. She tells Melina she has absolutely massive respect for that insane level of dedication. Melina just plays it down lightly, mentioning that when you solo dungeons, you must be able to hit every single elemental weakness you find. Alvin stares at her, realizing that since mages are not built for solo play, she really must have put in an absolutely insane amount of effort to reach this level. Now pay attention here. Kakeru suddenly remembers something important and checks the party menu. She looks totally horrified, pointing out a weird new debuff on the screen. Well, Melina casually explains it comes from her special blessing skill, displaying a melting heart icon none of them have ever seen. Alvin says the icon looks pretty sketchy, while Kakaru nervously reads the actual name out loud. Curse of the Jealous God. Melina just wonders if the curse only hit her because she got the final kill. The two of them just stand there in awkward silence for a second, staring blankly at the screen, trying to figure out what this means for Melina, who notices her stats just dropped by 3%. She says it honestly makes sense, but then gets a confused look, mentioning she definitely did not have any enchantment effect active before this whole thing. Kakaru wants to be completely sure about how this strange curse works, so she smartly suggests they find one more monster to fight, leading them right to a massive emerald golem appearing out of nowhere. Someone yells they found their next target, but Alvin gets totally serious. He quickly realizes this golem is not stuck like the others, and knows the backline simply cannot handle this huge beast alone. Alvin instantly gets ready to jump in, saying he is going to help, too. Meanwhile, the emerald golem pulls back its massive stone fist to crush him, but suddenly, a huge magic blast hits the golem right in the chest, and Alvin looks absolutely shocked. He yells out, asking if that was really magical support. Watching the golem stumble backwards, he realizes it is a powerful knockback. Just then, a system message pops up explaining that enough damage can cancel an enemy attack. The golem is clearly reeling. Alvin cannot believe the massive damage that single hit just caused. So he drops into a low stance, gripping his sword to get his heavy strike skill ready to go. He lunges forward with everything he has. Moving like an absolute blur, he slashes right through the golem, sending stone chunks flying everywhere as it completely shatters. Melina looks over at the rocks, and trust me, we are all impressed. He pulled that off without any physical penetration. Buffs. Stick with me here. Alvin looks super stressed after that wild encounter, barely having health left to take even one more hit. Melina totally notices his flawless moves, praising his skills and immediately asking if he is secretly some insanely high-level player in disguise. Alvin just nervously laughs it off, saying he honestly thought he was completely finished. Melina points out he still is not quite on the priest's level yet. They both glance over at Kakaru, who is standing quietly with her back turned. Melina casually asks her how the epic battle felt from her perspective, but Kakaru seems completely distracted, staring at her holographic status screen, looking super panicky. She mutters that something is missing, and Melina asks what she is even talking about. Kakaru suddenly lunges forward and desperately begs Melina to join their party, making this the second time she has asked today. Melina gets pretty annoyed and loudly yells back that they already teamed up. Kakaru instantly realizes she made a huge mistake and frantically tries to take back her words, explaining that is not what she meant. She stands there completely flustered, stammering awkwardly while desperately trying to sort out her chaotic racing thoughts. Kakaru suddenly grabs Melina's hands, getting super intense as she demands they stay together forever. I know what you're thinking. She practically begs Melina, making the poor girl turn bright red, stammering because she has zero clue what to say. Extremely embarrassed, Melina looks away and shyly mentions they are both girls, leaving Kakaru standing there looking completely lost. It finally clicks for Kakaru. She instantly panics, realizing she is acting just as wonderfully weird as Alvin does. Alvin overhears this and curiously asks what she means, which naturally makes Kakaru freak out way more. She hunches over and awkwardly stutters, desperately trying to find a way to fix this huge misunderstanding. She finally clarifies she just wants them to stay in a party after finishing this dungeon. Melina simply stands there in total, stunned silence. Melina goes from pure shock to bright red, eventually clearing her throat just to hide the fact she completely misread the entire hilarious situation. Regaining her cool, Melina gently reminds her she already explained exactly why they cannot form a real party. She then turns the question to Alvin, asking if he is okay with things, while he just quietly listens. Kakaru starts speaking up, and Alvin jumps in, explaining they actually possess tricky mina skills of their own. Melina looks incredibly focused while she carefully thinks about that legendary usurper skill. She admits the wild effect is hard to believe, but without a skill like that, there is no way to explain how they actually reached level 80. She glances right over at Alvin, noting that his current level is only 43. Alvin casually laughs it off, saying it was totally bound to happen since he just wanted good loot. Drops like every single other player. Melina softly looks down, saying she finally understands exactly what is going on with them, finding it super hard to believe they were chasing the exact same goal. She still seems just a bit hesitant. Looking them straight in the eye, she says she appreciates the thought, but she needs zero pity. She has her own bold way of doing things. Kakeru looks right back at her, making it absolutely crystal clear that this has nothing to do with pity. She tells Melina to check her personal stats first, and then closely examine the party stats. Melina pulls up her status window, wondering why she is even checking, but suddenly, she notices, the awful curse of the envious god is completely gone. She stands there confused, realizing she somehow snagged the defeat credit for that tentacle plant. Now pay attention. Alvin completely loses it. The status screen shows Kakeru is somehow the one carrying 2 massive stacks of that dangerous curse. Alvin looks over and casually asks Melina if she remembers how his headhunter skill works. Usually, if anyone in the party defeats a monster, the system simply registers that the glorious finishing blow belongs completely to him. Kakeru perfectly confirms this. She explains the terrible curse hits whoever actually lands the final strike. So, with Headhunter pretending, Alvin does everything. The heavy curse simply shifts onto him instead. Their skills interact perfectly. Kakeru's ability actually returns the experience points Alvin took, essentially shuffling those sweet rewards right back to where they belong. Melina takes a second to process the whole wild thing, looking down and saying she finally gets it. But then she looks over at Kakeru, quickly pointing out a really huge downside with the system working like this. Kakeru will literally never get defeat bonuses again. Kakeru just smiles softly, saying she really does not mind the loss. Melina reminds Alvin he is also losing out here. Since bonuses get split evenly now, there is absolutely no real benefit to him landing the finishing blow anymore. Alvin just stands there looking completely relaxed, telling her he is actually perfectly fine with how things are going. What do you and I make of this? He looks at her, saying victory credit shouldn't belong to just one person. Let us dive in, you and I. He admits beating that big golem only happened because she had his back the whole time. Melina is totally caught off guard by his kindness. But suddenly, her face drains of color, realizing she forgot something incredibly important. She screams out that Kakeru is currently carrying the entire weight of that curse all alone, taking on a massive burden normally shared by an entire group of fighters. Melina quickly explains that this nasty curse drops all stats by 3%, and the worst part is that the effect stacks up over time. This prompts Kakeru to hold up her holy symbol and mention a specific spell used for clearing out enchantment effects. She says that if the stat drops ever become way too heavy to handle, she can easily use her magic to dispel them, but Melina quickly points out the spell wipes out good buffs too. Plus, that chant is so incredibly long it is almost impossible in a real fight. Kakeru just looks back with a calm smile, telling them not to worry because it will honestly be fine. She reminds them she is actually level 80, so even if her stats were cut entirely in half, she would still be stronger than any average priest. Looking completely determined, Kakeru gives them her word she will fulfill her duties as their healer no matter what happens. Now pay attention here. Melina cannot help but ask why she is going this far, when there are only downsides for her. So Kakeru looks down, quietly admitting she is tired of just reaping rewards from other people doing the hard work. Melina goes totally quiet, thinking about how she could never truly repay the experience points she has stolen from others, no matter what she tries to do. Alvin admits it actually felt pretty suffocating being the only person who was constantly leveling up, And Kakaru smiles warmly, saying that compared to that, debuffs are basically nothing since she can easily find creative ways to handle them. Melina just stands there, looking completely shocked by how positive the priest is. Alvin breaks the awkward silence by calling out Melina by name to get her attention, suggesting they should try sticking together as a party for a while longer instead of just splitting up. He points out that whether they are looking for new routes or trying to earn money, it is much safer than going solo. Then he looks over at her with a massive grin and asks what she thinks about the idea. After a really long pause, Melina finally gives in with a small smile and says she is down for it. She mentions it probably will not be for long, but reaches out to shake hands, saying it is nice to meet them. This makes Kakaru grab her hands in pure excitement. Melina cannot help but freak out a little at the sudden energy. Alvin shakes hands with Melina and tells her he feels the exact same way about the group. You and I knew this was coming. They officially form their party and head deep into the 32nd level of the Cave of the Setting Sun. The squad jumps right into action, with Alvin charging a massive golem while the girls provide support. As Alvin violently slashes through a smaller fish monster on the front line, suddenly, Alvin yells out that one of the enemies got past him and quickly tells the girls to handle it. And Melina does not miss a beat, telling him she is on it as the monster lunges at them. She blasts the creature back with a quick spell while Alvin keeps the big golem completely busy in the back. The fight finally wraps up, and Alvin catches his breath while Kakaru cheers that they did a genuinely great job. As they sort through the loot, Alvin notices one of the drops looks a little strange, and shows it to Melina. She looks completely surprised as she tells him it is an incredibly rare gem called a mermaid tear. Kakaru looks over at Alvin and tells him he has some seriously insane luck. Alvin stares at the sparkling gem in his hand, fully realizing just how rare it actually is. He holds it up and tells the group this epic find definitely needs to go right to Melina. But Melina completely loses it, saying she cannot possibly accept something that ridiculously expensive. Alvin starts thinking back to that wild fight with the Emerald Golem and how they totally hijacked the situation while Melina was desperately trying to take charge and help out. It turns out she is actually pretty upset, yelling about how much heavy work it was gathering all those monsters together, only for things to just end up like this. So, she clearly tells Alvin not to worry about it, since the drop legally belongs to him. Alvin looks at her and says he cannot do that because taking it would just feel wrong. Melina stands her ground and explains that if she took the gem now, it would basically mean that his help was just a massive bother, and she is worried that if he felt that way, he might hesitate for even a split second the next time he tries to help someone else. She looks at him and sincerely says she would hate for things to get beyond repair just because he doubted himself. So, she proudly tells him he definitely did the right thing. Alvin stares right at her, totally caught off guard by her solid logic, and mentions how she has a really rational way of looking at things. Melina just asks if that is what he thinks, and Alvin finally gives in, agreeing to drop the subject for now, as Melina turns away, suddenly suspicious, and asks if he was just thinking about how wildly argumentative she is being. Alvin waves it off, completely flustered. Trust me, you are going to love what happens next. But she immediately calls him out. You and I both caught that, right? He basically admitted to thinking it anyway. Melina's face turns totally red, realizing her own behavior, while Cockroach just laughs in the background, teasing that Melina is clearly getting way too self-conscious about everything. The atmosphere gets super awkward, so Melina quickly tries to push things forward, suggesting they just ignore all of that nonsense for now and keep on moving. Melina checks out the cave walls and points out that this dungeon is actually incredibly deep. Cockroach totally agrees as they push onward. Alvin jumps into the conversation, mentioning that for a smaller dungeon like this, the boss room usually shows up halfway through the mid-levels, but they have not spotted it yet. He explains that the map merchant completely lacked charts for the lower sections, making things really complicated as Melina starts wondering just how incredibly deep this entire Labyrinth actually goes. She openly admits that she is genuinely starting to worry about their current situation. Alvin looks back and suggests they should definitely take a break on the upper floor, simply because they have zero clue where the next safe zone is. But Melina instantly waves the idea away, insisting that she is not tired at all, and that she is doing perfectly fine. She shifts her focus to their teammate and asks how Kokoro is holding up. This actually catches the priestess completely off guard. Melina looks serious, worrying that Kokoro's stats just keep falling because she is around, asking if she is pushing her limits too far. But Kokoro brightly smiles, saying a few battles do not bother her at all. Meanwhile, Alvin just watches her, realizing exactly how strong she is. Watch how the mood shifts here. Kokoro happily tells them both to forget all that and keep moving. Kokoro looks absolutely thrilled, claiming that missing out on experience points actually makes her incredibly happy. Melina just stares, thinking Kokoro's weird sense of joy is basically from a whole different planet. Melina glances back at Alvin, asking if holding down the front line completely by himself is becoming way too much of a heavy burden. But Alvin just grins, explaining that with top-tier healing and magic support from the backline, his job is actually an absolute breeze. He continues, pointing out how amazing things feel now that the debuffs are gone, and they are, finally, scoring real experience bonuses. Then he sheepishly rubs his neck, apologizing to Kokoro for completely taking advantage of her genuine kindness like that. Kokoro looks visibly shocked by the apology, and instantly assures him she does not feel used at all. Melina chimes in, adding that despite being a swordsman, he is doing an incredible job acting as their frontline shield. Alvin takes the compliment, feeling super relieved that everything is finally working out for their party. But suddenly, he stops and looks right up, sensing that something is definitely off. Kokoro notices him acting strange and immediately asks what is going on. Alvin points straight up, mentioning there is some mysterious writing on the wall above them. Melina squints up, but sees absolutely nothing, so she tells Alvin to read it out, since he is tall enough. Alvin reads it aloud, revealing how a warrior's power and an archer's vision fade away, but the mind stays sharp even in the darkest shadows. Melina frantically scribbles notes while Alvin points out it matches the weird text from the entrance. But Kokoro studies the text, pointing out that it really does not look like a hint for the boss drop. Melina freezes, quietly repeating the words boss, drop. She looks totally lost in deep thought, mostly because dungeons randomly spawn all across the world, and the exact second a boss is defeated, the entire labyrinth just vanishes into thin air completely, forever. Think about that for a second. This means they only get one real shot at this drop. Melina tightly grips her notebook, realizing she desperately needs to find the perfect way to ask this. She finally breaks the silence and calls out Alvin's name for attention. She gets straight to the point, asking if he actually plans on fighting the boss. Alvin confidently replies that he still has plenty of energy left, so he is definitely pushing forward. Melina drops the heavy question about what they should actually do with the boss drop, and that sudden realization hits Kokoro incredibly hard as the potential disaster unfolds. She seriously points out that if the special item meant to erase skills is just single use, Kokoro suddenly grasps the massive issue and nervously asks who would even use it. Melina looks her straight in the eye, confirming that is exactly the brutal dilemma they face. She mentions there might possibly be more than one item dropped, but they have absolutely no way of knowing if it is a single-use deal or not. Melina argues that if an item worked forever, people burdened with negative skills would completely vanish from the world, and that is just logically impossible here. It is likely a consumable that vanishes, or hopefully a drop for the entire party. But she quickly catches herself, noting that in her past experience, main boss drops are rarely one-time items. So the ultimate question is whether it holds a limited number of charges, and exactly how many times it can actually be used. So where does that leave us? Alvin casually says he will grab the item first and worry later, leaving Melina completely floored. Stick with me, She can't believe he's treating this huge problem so casually. She yells that he and Cockle are way too perfectly synced up for strangers, demanding to know if they're just playing a joke. Alvin stays super calm, validating her totally fair concerns, but politely asks her to just listen to his side for one quick second before they take another step. Melina tells him to continue, and Alvin warmly thanks her for the chance to fully explain himself. Alvin quickly explains to Melina that their entire situation is shifting constantly. They literally can't waste time, because someone else might easily snatch their goal if they just sit around chatting all day. He adds that if the raid advances or new intel drops, everything shifts, leaving Melina completely speechless at his flawless, rock-solid logic. That is exactly why he decided to just focus heavily on acting right then and there. He explains the absolute best start was just hunting that boss drop and seeing what unfolds. Melina listens in pure silence, secretly admitting to herself that his bold perspective actually makes a ton of perfect sense. She quickly realizes these two aren't simply getting by on lucky stats. They clearly possess the elite skills of true adventurers, which absolutely shows in how perfectly they carry themselves and the exact words they use. Alvin shoots her a gentle smile, making it clear that credit for a massive kill never belongs to just one single player. He makes completely sure she knows he only crushed that golem because her flawless support backed him up the entire time. Melina finally opens up, confessing she refuses to be like selfish players who only ever look out for themselves. She proudly declares she's totally done stealing rewards from everyone else's exhausting hard work. It's a massive shift for her, choosing to bravely step forward differently than those making completely awful, selfish choices. So, we both saw this coming, right? She looks at them, figuring that if she sticks with these two, they actually have a real shot at winning. Alvin suddenly notices Cockle looking intensely stressed out and asks why she's making such a goofy face. Melina feels so much more relaxed now, happily declaring it's perfectly fine to stress over things only when they actually occur. She absolutely loves that mindset, figuring that beyond just being a wonderfully positive vibe, sticking to this exact plan is undeniably the absolute fastest way for them to grab their goal. Alvin shoots her a super confident look, proudly stating he will absolutely do his part to make this whole thing succeed. Cockle gets hilariously fired up, yelling she'll do her absolute best so she can start worrying soon too, which just makes Melina burst into joyful laughter. She looks at Cockle and warmly tells her she's being totally weird, but Cockle is simply overjoyed to be adventuring with amazing friends like this. Blushing hard, she shyly asks if wanting that is actually so strange. Meanwhile, Melina starts thinking she might not even need a purely logical reason to stay part of this incredible team. Alvin quickly gets them back on track, suggesting they find the floor save point first, and Melina totally agrees. Now watch this. A massive, creepy sound suddenly rips through the air, leaving both girls frozen. Melina looks around, totally terrified, asking what that horrible voice could possibly be, while Cockle nervously adds the echo is so wildly bad she can't even track where it's coming from. Alvin spots the massive danger instantly and screams at them to check behind them, making Melina spin around incredibly fast. But she's still frantically trying to process what is actually happening. A distant voice frantically screams for everyone to run because monsters broke loose, and Cockle violently spins around, looking completely bewildered by the chaotic, sudden noise. Someone loudly yells out, demanding to know what's happening, while a distant figure is frantically seen sprinting for their life. An absolutely massive swarm of fishman monsters charges forward, their terrifying, deafening roar completely flooding the entire path. Alvin looks absolutely overwhelmed with these insane monsters right on his heels. His mind spins from their sheer, terrifying numbers, but he instantly snaps back to reality, commanding the girls that they absolutely must intercept this monster wave. Cockle bravely adds they have to help, making Melina smile brightly, incredibly relieved that literally nobody is hesitating to jump straight into this wild fight. Alvin intensely calls for the squad to switch their formation as they brace for the epic clash. But Melina boldly stops him, demanding to handle this one entirely herself before doing anything else, proudly explaining they're going to blast the enemy with the colossal attack right from the jump. Alvin realizes she's charging a massive area of effect spell, but panic hits him, since innocent adventurers are standing right in the direct line of fire. Melina confidently says it's absolutely no problem, but strictly warns the team that everyone must instantly dodge to the left the exact second her powerful skill activates. Alvin confirms he totally gets the plan, promising to throw a signal to the panicked guy sprinting further down the path. Cockle eagerly announces she'll start applying major buffs to the team, quickly asking if the lightning attribute is the smartest choice for this. Melina warmly thanks Alvin for the flawless support and urges Cockle to cast those electric buffs. Right this second, Alvin locks eyes ahead with an intensely serious face, declaring it is officially time for them to move. Trust me, you'll want to see what's next. He sprints toward the adventurer, yelling to dodge sideways instantly upon seeing the signal. Stick with me. This guy looks completely freaked out. He is just repeating words in a total panic while running. Alvin points and shouts loud instructions. The guy asks if he should go that way, spotting a dark opening in the wall. He seriously wonders if Alvin wants him to just jump right into that creepy hole. Suddenly, someone yells to watch out behind them, completely shocked and wondering what that massive, glowing energy gathering around the girls is actually doing. The panicked adventurer finally puts everything together. He frantically asks if a huge area attack spell is coming, and if he needs to quickly dodge aside. Alvin sees the guy moving, happy that his message finally got through. Clearly, he yells back to Melina that they are good to go. With everyone perfectly positioned, Alvin signals to fire while Melina and Kakoru unleash their massive, breathtaking magic attack. A massive energy blast rips right through the area, striking all the monsters. The adventurer desperately dives into the wall hole exactly as the blinding light hits. Kakoru looks at the insane destruction, playfully telling Melina she is being a little too rough with her wild power. But Melina barely seems bothered at all. She just calmly mentions that the guy seemingly managed to dodge the powerful hit just fine. Alvin stands there looking completely impressed, calling the spell's power absolutely crazy since the enemy numbers literally just vanished. Moving forward, someone happily notes that Alvin has a super sharp eye for spotting those amazing openings in a fight. Now watch this. The girls look back, realizing how wildly lucky they were to find that absolutely perfect hiding spot right there. Alvin intensely stares at the cave walls, mentioning his deep curiosity about weird terrain features that never even show up on maps. He turns back to Keikal, checking how those nasty debuff stacks look. Keikal smiles brightly, confirming she is already dispelling every single status effect, with some tough monsters still standing. Melina quickly asks if they should simply take the rest down one by one. Alvin completely agrees, telling the girls he will cheerfully leave the fighting style to them. They both give a quick nod, immediately charging up that rocky slope to finish this epic job. The incredible team starts fiercely tearing through the remaining fish monsters. Alvin handles intense close-range combat while the girls provide amazing support. The saved adventurer watches from the sidelines, completely blown away. Drawing a sword, the hero loudly shouts about, eagerly, jumping into battle. Alvin looks right back at the rescued girl, telling her it is totally fine to rest. He really hates seeing her pushed too hard. A weird fish monster looks around, totally confused about where everyone went. However, this brave adventurer is absolutely not done yet. She leaps right back into the fight, carving smoothly through the monster while Alvin happily watches her move. With a massive grin, she cheerfully claims she feels amazing since her health is 100% again. Kokol and Melina absolutely refuse to slow down, pushing firmly through the cavern to clear out the remaining pack. The adventurer gazes around the empty cave, innocently asking if this wild fight is really over. You and I both need a breather. The group finally reaches a safe point on Sunset Cave, floor 32, taking a second to sit. The girl feels awful and sincerely apologizes, explaining how she accidentally attracted that incredibly massive monster swarm. She looks at them with pure respect, claiming they are incredibly strong for actually saving her life. Alvin just smiles warmly, telling her not to worry. Helping each other out is what being a true adventurer is all about. The rescued girl introduces herself as Tito. Being a skilled thief, she seems super eager to quickly clarify that she is definitely not some common criminal outside the dark dungeon. Tito playfully laughs it off. Alvin gives her a genuinely kind look, warmly telling her he knows a job title is just a label. It never really defines who a person is on the inside. Tito lets out a sweet laugh, feeling completely relieved that he is so incredibly understanding. Alvin proudly introduces himself as a swordsman, explaining that they all met quite recently inside the Sunset Caves. They are actually just a temporary party for now. Coco kindly introduces herself as the cleric, while Melina adds she handles magic as their mage. Tito goes completely quiet for a second. She honestly seems stuck on the sad fact that their group is temporary. Alvin breaks the awkward silence by asking if she is really wandering this deep dungeon all by herself. Tito just smiles brightly, claiming she is actually a way higher level than she currently looks. Melina doesn't let him off easy, noting it is funny for a guy who was just screaming his head off to suddenly talk big. Tito awkwardly rubs the back of her head, apologizing again, while nervously making the excuse that there were simply way too many monsters back there. Alvin asks if solo thieves normally go this deep, smoothly guessing that she was probably just hunting down some epic treasure. Tito happily explains that since the area is usually empty, it is a truly perfect spot for farming loot. Alvin quietly thinks about how thieves easily use incredible speed to dodge bad fights and amazing skills to crack tough locks. This clearly makes them the absolute best solo class for avoiding endless combat while making money. Seeing exactly how she handles herself. So what do we take from this? Melina figures her level is super high, making total sense for a skilled solo player hunting deep floor treasure. Come along with me. The explanation fits. But Alvin still stands there feeling like something is just way off about this whole situation. Tito just stares right back, asking if that is true, sounding absolutely certain. Alvin looks at Tito, mentioning he actually assumed she had a minus skill like them. That completely catches her off guard. Touching her chin, she asks if they seriously push this far down just for some crazy rumor about a boss dropping a skill erasing item. The entire group just sits there in dead silence. Tito stares, asking if they are actually being serious right now before she completely loses it. She bursts out laughing, saying this whole thing is way too absurd. It gets on Melina's nerves, so she snaps, demanding to know the joke. Tito cannot even stop her laughing fit as she tries explaining what is so funny. But Melina cuts in, arguing that innate skills are a lifelong deal. They should not be able to just disappear. Tito looks them dead in the eye, saying a magic item breaking the world's rules like that is just a fairy tale. She tells them flat out that an overpowered item like that cannot exist. Melina glares at the group with a dead serious expression, asking if they still plan on going. Tito instantly shuts that down, claiming there is zero chance a magic item breaking the laws of physics actually exists. Now watch closely. Kokoro asks again if they actually want to go, and Alvin does not even hesitate, telling her they are definitely going. Melina chimes in, explaining she checked every single corner from the ancient texts on her way down. She is completely convinced there are things out there that actually erase skills. Tito stays sitting on her crates, mentioning she knows a ton about special items since she is a thief. But she follows that up, saying she truly doubts any item can permanently mess with the person's core status. Melina is not having it, telling her it is way too early to make crazy assumptions like that, especially since there are plenty of insane skills out there Tito has probably never even heard about yet. The descriptions for their group-specific titles appear, marking Kakeru as holding divine protection and a usurper. Alvin stands in silence, looking super deep in thought about it all. Melina admits proving the item is fake is tough, but Tito just thinks this whole trip is a massive waste. Alvin does not seem bothered, though. He says they already knew the item might not exist before they even began. And he points out they have still managed to push this deep into the dark cave anyway. Melina shoots him a serious look, asking if he is prepared for the wild consequences coming. Alvin nods, but tells her straight up that while he appreciates the warning, they are absolutely still going. You see this coming, right? Melina drops a huge reality check. The boss is on the 40th floor. Alvin is totally taken aback, realizing the boss is way deeper in this dungeon than he ever expected. That makes things brutally tough. You normally need a full party, 10 levels above the floor to win, and they are nowhere near that. Melina points out that even hitting the level requirements, they are still really short on people. She tries showing them that no matter how skilled they feel, 3 people just cannot beat a boss. Melina claims she has figured out what is actually happening, but Tito immediately tries shutting her down. Moving on, Melina asks Tito straight up if she is basically asking to join their party. Tito gets super defensive, saying it is not that, and diving deep with the random party is straight up suicide. Alvin speaks up next, starting to apologize to Tito because things are about to completely change. He tells the group he really doesn't think they should turn back yet. Tito just stands there in silence, looking like she has plenty on her mind. Alvin says the absolute first thing they must do is confirm if there are really 40 floors here. On top of that, he wants to check out the boss's elemental weaknesses and see exactly how it attacks, if possible. Kakaru looks up, smiling, saying the whole point is making sure they are totally ready for their next big challenge. Tito sits there looking visibly annoyed, but she eventually gives in sighs, saying she totally gets it. She stands up, telling the group she is actually going to guide them right to the boss room. Everyone stops in their tracks, completely shocked, repeating the words boss room like they cannot even believe her right now. Tito walks ahead, explaining she has never actually been inside because she ignores boss fights, but she has reached the entrance before. Alvin thinks that is a massive help, but he asks her why she is suddenly deciding to be nice. Tito smiles, she knows he'd go regardless, so she's guiding them as an apology. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. Let's jump in. Melina gets super hyped about this speed boost, telling Alvin they need to move out right away, leaving Tito holding out 3 tiny bottles, telling the group to drink these poison resistance potions since they are moving forward. Alvin grabs the gear, double-checking to make absolutely sure these are real poison resistance potions. Tito smiles, explaining these drinks perfectly block the poison status, though she admits she already knows all the basic stuff. Kakaru suddenly chimes in, cheerfully mentioning she has powerful buffs to handle poison resistance, if the team really needs them. But Tito quickly points out that nearly every single monster ahead relies entirely on poison. Kakaru looks super surprised, asking if it gets that dangerous. She starts realizing that potions actually last much longer than her own magical buffs, which normally tend to wear off incredibly fast. Tito adds that drinking these will definitely lighten the heavy burden on their priestess during this dungeon crawl. Melina nods along cheerfully, agreeing. That is a totally fair point. Tito wastes 0 time and confidently chugs her bottle, telling the whole group to hurry up and get moving already. Alvin just watches her, pretty surprised by how fast she takes charge. Still, he admits he is just really glad they do not have to take some massive, annoying detour to reach their goal. Even so, the thought of the major boss waiting on the 40th floor makes him nervous. He knows they cannot be reckless or put the girls in any crazy, unnecessary danger. So, he figures if they want to play things safe, they really need to rethink their team formation before advancing. Now watch this carefully. The empty bottle hits the ground, fully drained. Alvin just stands there with a dark expression, realizing way too late that they have been completely played. He starts sweating and gasping for breath, realizing the drink was totally spiked. Right on cue, system alert confirms he just got hit with paralysis. Tito just leans in and starts laughing her head off, cheerfully calling the entire group a bunch of massive, gullible idiots. She keeps mocking them, saying it is their own fault for actually drinking random stuff given to them by a total stranger. Alvin and his friends collapse onto the dirt, barely able to move. He frantically tries figuring out how this happened, since she clearly drank the exact same stuff. But Tito just pulls out another little bottle, playfully asking if he means the one she had. She casually explains that the bottle she chugged was an actual, real anti-poison potion, but the liquid she handed to Alvin and his friends was actually paralyzing fluid from a toxic lime toad. She holds the two bottles side by side, cheerfully pointing out that their colors look so incredibly similar, they never stood a chance of telling them apart. Tito explains that right after handing the fake drinks to everyone, she sneakily swapped her own bottle out for the real deal. She playfully asks if he seriously missed the switch. Meanwhile, Alvin just lies totally frozen in the dirt, unable to speak. He looks over, seeing Melina and Cockle are sadly both down too. Spotting two empty bottles nearby, he quickly realizes Cockle must have taken the bait too. You and I know exactly how Tito played them, right? She was super friendly, keeping the conversation moving lightning fast, so he never had a chance to think. Alvin realizes he got completely swept up in the information she was dumping on him and totally forgot to check the actual item names. He stares blankly at the sky, realizing this total disaster is completely his own fault. Tito just smiles brightly and tells them that this is pretty scary stuff. She says, "This is exactly what happens when you do not take adventuring seriously enough." Announcing it is time to work, she reaches straight down toward Alvin's arm. Cheering she is just borrowing his hand for a second, she laughs out loud, breaking right into his inventory and claiming all his storage for herself. All his precious items hit the dirt as his storage gets totally emptied. Tito finishes cleaning out Alvin's gear completely and casually mentions she is robbing the mage next. But then Cockle suddenly stands up right behind her, eyes glowing with furious anger, raising her mace. Tito completely loses it. She screams in pure shock, realizing her perfect plan just hit a massive brick wall. She barely manages jumping back, yelling out in total panic as she frantically tries putting distance between her and the priestess. Tito immediately drops into a fighting stance, daggers out, completely confused about how anyone is still moving around. She lets out a super nervous laugh, trying to play it cool while frantically asking herself how this is possible. Looking back at the fully paralyzed bodies of Alvin and Melina, Tito points at Cockle, swearing she absolutely saw her drink that potion. Cockle stays perfectly calm, openly admitting she actually did drink every single drop. But it turns out she boasts a high-level paralysis resistance skill. It makes the liquid completely useless against her, leaving Tito stunned. Realizing the cute girl she tried to rob actually possesses some incredibly serious skills. Cockle is not done with this tricky thief just yet, calmly stating she has one more question. Tito just stands there, rocking a nervous, sweaty grin. She checks her own status bar, panicking over why her health is suddenly incredibly low. Trust me on this one. The priestess calmly reveals she is actually level 80. A massive bombshell, making Tito absolutely lose it, gripping her mace perfectly steady. Let's jump into this wild standoff. Cockle points out her strengths that completely outclasses this little thief, asking if Tito actually thinks she can fight back with that tiny sliver of HP she has left. Tito just hunches over, letting out a totally forced laugh, asking how she could possibly say no to someone that ridiculously powerful. She basically throws in the towel. Her weapon hits the ground with a loud clatter as she drops to her knees, raising both hands. Tito whines that having a level that high is absolute cheating. But Cockle isn't having it, coldly reminding the thief that she is the absolute last person who gets to complain about fairness. Threat neutralized. Cockle casts a quick recovery spell, and Alvin finally sits up, groaning dramatically about how awful that attack felt. Cockle keeps Tito completely pinned down, saying she has her physically trapped for now, but she quickly asks the group to toss her a rope. Melina starts scrolling right through her digital inventory menu, while Alvin steps forward and confidently says he will handle this. A thick coil of rope pops right out of the screen. He thanks her warmly, while they quickly tie up the sneaky thief. Cockle glares at their new prisoner, suggesting they head straight back to hand her over to the guild. But Tito just sits there all tied in knots, dramatically crying about the huge bump currently throbbing on her head. Melina doesn't care at all, casually wondering out loud if it might just be easier to toss this thief to that merman pack instead. This actually gets Cockle pretty worried, until Melina smiles and says she's joking, but she realizes this thief's luck is absolutely insane, finally understanding that this whole crazy situation was actually a deliberate player elimination attempt from the start. Now watch closely. It's a dirty trick where players lure monster mobs and dump the aggro onto someone else to eliminate them. Tito remains completely tied up and is absolutely panicking. She swears up and down that this whole disaster was just a massive accident. But Cockle isn't buying a single word, telling the group she completely distrusts this thief, and they really should just hand her to the guild. Alvin looks out across the area, mentioning that eliminating other adventurers is a massive taboo here. If this thief actually tried to pull a player elimination, things are about to get seriously ugly fast. The entire group stands there staring at their prisoner, desperately trying to figure out if this was a mistake or something far more sinister. Melina finally speaks up, saying she is completely on the same page as Kakeru about ditching this thief. She correctly points out that dragging a prisoner along is a massive hassle, but just leaving them behind alone would be way too risky. Kakeru pulls out a special scroll called a map of memories that warps them straight back to the entrance, asking Alvin if he understands how this item works. Alvin just stands there, deeply thinking, arms crossed. He slowly looks up with a very serious expression, asking the girls if they can actually hold off on heading back for a little bit, leaving Kakeru and Melina completely caught off guard, deeply wondering what his actual plan is. Alvin starts pacing around as he brilliantly breaks down the whole situation. He says that first off, there is a very high chance this sneaky thief would just slip away before they ever reached the guild. He looks right at the prisoner, pointing out the kid probably has a special skill to break ropes. But Tito just loudly laughs it off, telling Alvin he is completely overthinking this whole dramatic thing. Alvin does not buy her act at all. He claims the only reason she is acting so completely chill is because she can easily escape whenever she wants. I know what you're thinking. Alvin isn't exactly a genius, but whenever something feels wrong, he's learned to stop and really think about the reason why. It's a habit his old sword master firmly drilled into him, so he is applying it right here. Standing his ground, Alvin seriously asks Tito why the only things taken were the exact items someone would actually need to keep adventuring inside this dungeon. Tito sits there tied up, asking if he is simply imagining things, while the girls silently watch. From the side, Alvin clearly points out that the inventory menu shows the only things missing were potions and basic survival supplies. Alvin carefully goes right through the list of supplies. He points out things like food and spare equipment they still have, proving to the girls that most of their gear is totally safe, making Melina shout out in pure realization. Holding up a glowing jewel called Merman's Tears, he confidently explains that if their actual goal was robbery, a real thief never would have left behind a rare item like this jewel. Tito just stays dead quiet, staring back with a serious expression as that logic finally sinks in. Kakeru quickly starts piecing it together too, realizing these guys are not actually assassins or greedy bandits. But Alvin takes it one bold step further, asking if their only real goal was simply to stop the party from going any deeper into this dungeon. Tito finally breaks the entire act with a sigh, admitting that since Alvin already figured that much out, she just wants to know why they cannot just turn around and quietly go home. Alvin and Kakeru are left completely staring at the prisoner, with Alvin confusedly asking what that is even supposed to mean. Let's see what we find together. Melina looks down the path, wondering what's actually hidden further in. Stick with me here. Tito looks down at her ropes, feeling it was her duty to stop them after being saved. but then her face turns completely creepy. She tells them to just go fight the boss anyway, purely because she hopes they all get absolutely wrecked. Kakeru is totally stunned by the sudden wild mood swing, asking if the thief actually has some secret info on the boss. Tito just looks away, muttering that they probably would not believe her anyway. Alvin stays completely calm, telling her that while she has been acting super weird, it honestly seems like she just wanted to stop them from making a massive mistake. Looking her right in the eyes, he tells her to just be totally honest. He promises that if things are actually that terrible, they might literally turn around and head straight home. Tito finally spills the truth, explaining that the boss down here has a crazy secret, and that is exactly why nobody has ever beaten it. Before going any further, she asks the girls if they even brought a map. Melina explains they could not find a map anywhere, not even at the map store. Tito is not surprised at all, saying that makes total sense. Her expression turns serious as she asks if they do not think that is pretty weird. The group sits together in the cave while Tito explains that successful adventurers normally bring back map fragments to sell for a really quick and easy buck. But Melina just assumes the cave is simply brand new or totally unpopular. Now pay attention here. Tito shuts that idea down instantly, telling her the real reason is way more mysterious. Looking right at the dungeon entrance, she says it is because nobody who went inside has ever returned. Alvin is completely stunned by this heavy news, arguing it should be impossible for everyone to just vanish. He argues that any group strong enough to reach floor 40 would be incredibly careful with their every single move. Tito just repeats the word cautious back to him with a massive sigh, making Melina get pretty frustrated. She asks what the huge sigh was for, but Tito just tells her to listen, reminding everyone that all the lower floors are absolutely swarming with crazy poison-type monsters. Melina points out that if a party has the right countermeasures for all that poison, just getting down to the boss room is not even that difficult. So she explains exactly how a cautious adventurer usually thinks in that scenario. They finally reach the massive doors and start telling themselves they are still perfectly fine. Maybe taking a super quick peek inside the boss room wouldn't hurt. The adventurer in her story thinks they should at least confirm the dungeon truly has 40 floors, and then maybe check out the elemental affinity and attack patterns of the boss while they are there. Kokoro chimes in, saying it is all just for the sake of being completely prepared for the real fight later. But Tito's expression turns super dark as she explains the trap. You and I both know this is bad. The second anyone steps inside, the door slams shut, and terrifyingly, no adventurer has ever made it back out again. She reminds the whole group that since the dungeon is still perfectly standing, it is super obvious. Nobody has cleared it yet. Everyone falls completely silent as Alvin realizes that if parties never came back, they are all definitely gone. Those massive doors to the boss room loom right ahead, and Alvin wonders if every party before them got completely wiped out behind those exact gates, which gets Melina thinking really hard about the mechanics. She points out that a door closing on its own is a clear sign that once you go inside, there is zero turning back, and she starts questioning whether they are walking toward a massive win or just heading straight to their final downfall. The heavy weight of the situation hits the entire group as they realize that retreating really is not a valid option anymore. So, Alvin takes a seat, mentioning how incredibly tough it must be for any adventurer to deal with. This upon seeing a crazy setup like this for the first time. Melina looks extremely stressed as she mentions she has fought plenty of deep floor bosses in her own time. But Alvin looks over at her, reminding her she is a top-tier healer, then asks if there is something about this specific room she is totally missing. She explains that boss rooms usually lock you inside purely because the entire fight is built around one specific gimmick. And Tito chimes in with a cheeky grin, asking if the lock just keeps people from escaping and leaking the boss secrets to everyone else, which Melina confirms is usually the case. But she adds that whenever a dungeon has a crazy condition like this, there is always a clue hidden somewhere nearby to help them out. Melina continues her thought, saying the clues are usually things like similar gimmicks they have seen before, or maybe some text written nearby, and she admits she is unsure why it works exactly that way. But that is just how things operate, leading Kakeru to chime in, pointing out that a boss room in a totally empty dungeon like this one feels super out of place. And she argues there is just absolutely no way this is actually a gimmick room that they cannot retreat from. But here is what we know. Melina doesn't buy it for a second, flat out saying Alvin is totally lying again. Stick with me here. Alvin gets super flustered, explaining how this small dungeon just feels completely wrong and totally off. He points out that if the sheer failure rate was the only obstacle, top players would have cleared this place ages ago. Melina looks at him, asking if he genuinely believes there is some massive hidden secret right here. Alvin just looks down, betting that this boss has some insanely complex, totally unique mechanic meant only for this specific fight. He loudly complains that giving them absolutely zero clues to work with is just being way too unfair and unreasonable. Melina completely agrees. Dungeons always have weird exceptions, but they are absolutely never supposed to be this completely unfair. Right then, Tito pipes up from the floor, softly apologizing for interrupting their intense little team chat. Melina shoots her a sharp glare, calling Tito out. She notes how the girl knows way too much about this sunset cavern. Getting straight to the point, she firmly demands to know exactly why Tito even came down here in the first place. Tito stares right back, looking totally panicked, like she was just put directly on the spot. Melina skips, waiting, wondering loudly if Tito's crew was actually hunting a treasure chest in those deep layers. Alvin argues there are zero maps or returning players giving them intel, while Kakeru adds they could never have known the deep layers even existed. Tito explains the layers were already there, which quickly makes Melina realize she is actually completely right. Holding up one finger to get attention, Tito tells the whole group there is actually one more little thing. Now pay close attention. Here, she explains how everything shifted when escaping became totally impossible and winning turned super tough. Melina points out that Tito must have just stood there, watching countless other adventuring parties charge into the dungeon. Alvin adds she never actually joined anyone, pointing out that this is a genuinely weird way to act. He calls out Tito's name while Melina pushes harder, asking her true goal for standing outside the boss room. Tied up and sweating, Tito just sits there, seriously struggling to find the right words to explain. Looking down, she quietly tells the group that they probably already know the real truth. She tells Alvin to just ask his brother directly. Kakeru is left completely confused. Meanwhile, Alvin just sits there thinking it over for a quick second before casually mentioning he actually has a solid guess here. Tito closes her eyes, telling them to correct her if she is wrong. We both know this feeling. A memory hits one fruit in the dirt. A tiny prize meaning everything. Back when everyone was an enemy, you fought for basic resources. Back when young Alvin was eating fruit on the streets, he heard an epic story that changed everything. A story proving that life did not have to be about constantly fighting for scraps. Instead, it told of legendary adventurers who actually shared their burdens, bravely facing every single hardship together as friends. By age 10, he set out to become a humble adventurer, just like those heroes in his dreams. So, he started helping others with a bright smile, knowing he would never find real teammates without staying super positive. Later on, he finally joined a group, loudly cheering about sharing everything and facing the world as one team. But during a clash with some monsters, Alvin gets hit by a massive debuff wave, wrecking his stats. Unable to move properly, he desperately tries figuring out how to cancel out these awful status effects. Dropping hard, Alvin lands face first in the dirt as the creepy monsters slowly close in around him. Reaching out, he begs his teammates for help, but they just keep walking away. A tight close-up shows his face. Completely crushed, he huddles on the ground, holding his face, yelling about his own naivety. He decisively promises himself that this will absolutely never happen again. Standing up, he shouts to the empty air that he is completely done, and never forming parties again. He turns his back on the dungeon entrance, decisively, walking away all alone. Back in the present, Tito brags about handling things alone, claiming that snatching a sweet boss drop is actually super easy. Playing it off smoothly, she jokingly calls herself just a lowly little thief. Then she reveals her genius plan. Just wait for another party to defeat the boss and quickly snatch up all their loot. Alvin looks right at her, guessing that was exactly what she originally intended to do to their team. Melina totally loses it, yelling at the girl, asking if she seriously just admitted to stealing from them. Alvin puts the puzzle pieces together, asking if she just hid nearby, watching another party rush in without offering any help. Alvin finishes his bold thought. So what do you and I make of this? Tito admits she was totally waiting to steal their items, explaining a solo thief simply cannot score epic boss drops on her own. Stick with me here. Melina yells about basically confessing to thievery. While Kokol is stunned, a guild member would pull this stunt. But Alvin looks over, mentioning that without a bounty on her head, stealing boss drops definitely isn't her usual kind of gig. Tito looks down, quietly admitting this was totally a one-time mistake, because she was super desperate and completely out of other options. So the party sits together outside the cavern while Alvin brings up the big issue of her being stuck with a negative skill. Tito explains that since running away from a boss room is impossible anyway, she never actually had a fair chance at stealing the victory. Alvin just tells her to completely forget it. Caught completely off guard, Tito asks exactly how long he has known about her hidden secret. He admits he got curious watching her use so many different skills while battling the merman. He didn't catch the exact details, just that she was throwing out a massive bunch of them all at the same time. Alvin keeps explaining that since she had so many crazy abilities stacked up, he figured she definitely had to be dealing with some negative ones, especially down here. But once he looked at it that way, everything she was doing suddenly started making perfect, absolute sense. Melina points out that even knowing the system would block her from stealing, she still refused to just give up and walk away. Now watch closely. Tito acts completely unbothered, claiming she doesn't mind since looting deep floor treasure chests brings in some seriously great money. Alvin looks her right in the eye, asking if she saw other high-level adventurers fail to clear the floor while she was waiting around. She just smirks, reminding him she actually tried her absolute best to warn them about how incredibly dangerous it was down there. But apparently, nobody ever bothers to listen. She sighs, mentioning that most adventurers are basically just total idiots anyway. Alvin points out how their group just conveniently showed up while she was around, right when they met in the sunken caves and decided to form a quick temporary party together to safely handle the area. Melina sits back, telling her she honestly just wanted to give her a friendly heads up about this whole crazy situation. Melina gives Alvin a gentle smile, asking if finding awesome friends willing to follow him this far isn't already more than enough. She points out it shouldn't even matter if he can't ditch his negative skill, as long as he has his amazing crew. Alvin sits in total silence, processing her words and honestly feeling much better. But then, Melina speaks up again to quickly grab his attention. She loudly asks the group what Tito's negative skill does. Alvin doesn't want to overstep and guess, so Tito speaks up, calling the skill Mummy Hunter, leaving Kakaru totally confused about what that bizarre name even means. Tito leans back, sighing deeply and admitting it is an incredibly annoying skill to handle. Kakaru looks super surprised, admitting she has absolutely never heard of a wildly named skill like that. Melina thinks it over, saying she has zero idea what kind of weird effect that type of skill would cause. Alvin finally asks Tito directly what the skill is and what it actually does. The group sits as Tito stares down at the ground. She finally lets out a heavy sigh, breaking the awkward silence. Let's pause for a second. She explains her skill, forces her to take on every single debuff that her party members receive during adventures. She sighs deeply, saying that is basically the whole truth. Alvin looks incredibly stressed processing this. thinking about how totally insane it is for someone to absorb a harsh debuff for another party member. Realizing if her skill interacts with his own negative skill, things will get terrible. He mutters that this is absolutely no good. He worries Tito's skill will end up dumping every single one of his terrible debuffs directly onto her. Melina suddenly yells out, asking if it's actually true that it only transfers the debuffs and absolutely nothing else. Kakeru is even more shocked, shouting at Tito and asking how she can even distinguish that it's a bad debuff. Alvin just stands there, looking incredibly confused by all this. He admits he really doesn't understand what makes magic users so hyped over this stuff. Kakeru lectures them, saying buffs and debuffs are just labels adventurers invented, since technically, they're all just regular status effects. Melina breaks down how status magic works, explaining that a spell meant to clear effects just instantly wipes out everything since magic can't differentiate between buffs and debuffs. This leads everyone to totally geek out over how incredibly rare Tito's skill is. But Alvin simply nods as Tito sits there tied up, looking like she has heard this all before. Tito finally speaks up with a super tired look, telling them that no matter how rare people think it is, the skill is honestly just a giant pain for her. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Kakeru looks confused, asking if having that kind of skill isn't actually a massive benefit for a party. Stick with me here. She pictures a scenario where Tito just acts as a human shield, soaking up a tiny durability debuff for the whole team, saving them all. But Tito quickly stops her right there, explaining that while taking the same debuff repeatedly usually changes nothing, her personal skill is definitely not that forgiving. Kakeru just stares at her, completely confused, asking what she means, clearly missing the massive downside here. Then Tito drops the truth. Her mummy catcher skill actually forces the debuff rank to spike up every time it triggers. So instead of one tiny hit, she ultimately gets crushed by a massive impact. She holds up her hand, showing the crazy math. She explains that 4 hits turn a tiny debuff into a special rank disaster. Kakeru goes completely quiet, finally realizing just how terrifying that would be and seeing the real catch to Tito's supposedly rare ability. Tito explains that absorbing a massive wave of debuffs all at once is basically the worst possible nightmare scenario. Her eyes suddenly go dark, flashing back to a super terrifying moment in her past when things went completely sideways. She remembers how her stats once plummeted way below the halfway mark mid-battle, leaving her totally helpless as she desperately screamed for her teammates to wait and help her out. But they just kept running, leaving her there crying as every single one abandoned her to be wiped out. Tito looks down, mentioning she almost got eliminated back then. That's why she plays strictly solo now, figuring it's way better to be alone than getting betrayed again. Alvin looks incredibly sympathetic, genuinely apologizing that she had to suffer through such a wildly rough experience. Watch closely here. Melina suddenly cuts in, telling them to stop. Something about Tito's story just isn't adding up. Melina firmly points out that having every single stat crash below half like that is super weird and mathematically impossible. Melina stands there with crossed arms, looking highly skeptical, prompting Tito to ask if she doubts her crazy story. Melina quickly clarifies that she is absolutely not calling her a liar. She just really wants to grasp the logic behind what occurred, explaining that the mummy snatcher skill simply cannot stack debuffs. It just ranks them up. Melina adds that since debuffs hit a ceiling at the special rank, your stats shouldn't ever drop below half, and she shows a chart proving rank ups hit a 40% limit, while stacking just keeps going. But then Tito instantly perks up, admitting Melina is completely right about that rule. Except there's a huge catch. She reveals that certain specific debuff combinations out there can actually secretly stack together. Tito grabs a whiteboard, proving how mixing a stat drop with the durability debuff makes a 52% decrease. So math checks out. Melina points out that having every single stat totally halved like that is an absolutely insane situation. Tito just quietly looks to the side, admitting that under totally normal circumstances, something like that almost never actually happens. Tito sits back, explaining that this horrible mess only happens when the extra effect of the mummy hunter's skill actually manages to trigger. We both felt that coming. Cockle asks what this means, and Melina realizes they're finally hitting the real danger. Tito warns them that the power of this negative skill isn't set in stone. It actually shifts based on specific conditions. Getting serious, she decides to read the official skill description aloud so they understand. The skill basically forces every single party debuff onto the holder, and insanely enough, the more items they find, the more brutal those debuffs get. Melina asks what a reward drop rate is. Right. As Cockle figures out, that's the main hidden condition they're facing. Melina wonders if it's a hidden stat, but Tito reveals it isn't even on the status screen. She literally has to test it herself just to find out. Alvin starts connecting the dots. He realizes their crazy money luck and drop rate skills are actually making everything so much worse. Hitting max reward rate is exactly what is massively supercharging the power of those awful debuffs. Tito notes the effects endlessly stack for every taken debuff, especially since their insane luck skills push the reward rate super high. Tito keeps explaining that the debuff power is definitely not random. It literally scales up based on exactly how many high-tier skills the active party is running. Mummy Snatcher is purely brutal, basically acting like a giant magnet pulling all negative stats off everyone else and instantly stacking them right onto Tito. So the better the party actually thrives, the more she gets totally crushed. She even laughs about how physically heavy those stacked debuffs really feel. She flashes back to a past run where another adventurer suddenly joined her party right mid-dungeon. Trust me, you're gonna want to see what happens next. Because that guy had luck skills, her negative math completely shifted, making everything brutally spike way faster than she ever expected. Stick with me here. Tito admits she dropped her guard, completely unaware of how fast things would escalate. Alvin hears her out, but something about how these game mechanics actually work is still really bothering him. So he asks if these crazy effects can actually drop in power instead of just getting much worse. Every single time they get stronger. Tito checks the text again. The skill literally says increase or decrease, which completely takes absolutely everyone by surprise. She figures if someone had awful stats, like extreme bad luck or low drops, this Mummy Snatcher skill could actually reverse itself and keep her totally safe. Melina is completely stressed out. She loudly demands to know exactly how much this crazy debuff will drop. She screams right back that she has zero idea. Still tied up on the ground, Alvin casually mentions it is her own skill. Alvin reminds them they are not a party anymore, so it is not his problem. Besides, he straight up tells her he would never join a broke party like hers, even if they paid him. The guy in the back is speechless, while Alvin slumps over, and completely done with everything. Kokoro desperately tries to tell him to pull it together. Melina honestly does not care if he is just guessing. She just wants him to give her an answer immediately. Alvin finally says something so unexpected that it completely catches Melina off guard, making her yell out, "Now, pay attention, you'll love this twist." He suggests doing the exact opposite by using mid-tier drop rate nerfs and bad luck. By checking how the stats balance out, Alvin figures that should be completely enough to cancel those minor rank debuffs. The entire group stands there in total silence, staring at him like they cannot even process what he just said. Melina asks if they should give the plan a shot for now, while Alvin just tips his hat, looking pretty serious. Melina dramatically turns to Tito, points her finger, and demands that she needs to join their party. Looking totally annoyed, Tito asks if Melina was even listening, quickly reminding her she already firmly said no to joining another group. Melina just smiles brightly, urging her to play a few matches, and happily promises to make it totally worthwhile, adding a cheeky probably at the end makes Tito, still tied up on the ground, angrily ask what that is even supposed to mean. Tito gets a sharp look in her eye, asking how they like this. The armored guy tosses an object high into the air to test her. Looking completely shocked, Tito tracks it and shouts out her epic merman-style move. In a split second, she stands up, clapping her hands, totally free. The pile of ropes just sits there in the dirt, leaving Melina staring at her with absolutely dead eyes. Pointing out she escaped those ropes just as naturally as breathing. Alvin gives a warm smile and asks the girls if they will tag along. Tito looks a little flustered, but smiles right back, telling him she would be completely happy to. Deep down on the 32nd floor of Sunset Cave, the crew keeps moving through the rocks. Kokoro looks down, telling Tito she is incredibly sorry for hitting her from behind earlier. Tito tells her not to apologize, since she totally deserved it, happily pointing out that her health points are already restored anyway. Looking pretty guilty, Kokoro sadly explains, "It is not just about the health points. She simply tried to make sure it did not hurt much." Tito just looks at her and gives a simple nod. Then she touches her jaw, telling Kokoro the injury is absolutely no big deal. Basically just a minor scratch, really. She smiles and says that kind of stuff happens whenever anyone takes a hit to the jaw. You and I both realize the truth here. Damage in this place does not always come from scary monsters or dungeon traps. Alvin kicks back with hands behind his head, laughing loudly. He tells Tito her raw strength is actually insane, even without buffs, which completely catches her off guard. She instantly turns bright red and shouts back, demanding who exactly he is calling insane. But the mood quickly shifts as they walk deeper into the cave. Melina mentions that the merman tears were a pretty generous reward, asking Alvin for his honest take on it. So Alvin stretches out and gets totally honest with them, easily admitting he would not have even started this epic trip if they had not come along. Melina catches him looking a bit down, asking if he is still hung up on being called pathetic earlier, but Alvin just stays totally quiet. So he completely changes the subject, asking Melina why they even entered Sunset Cave in the first place. Melina does not hesitate for a second, explaining the entire point is to finally get rid of her annoying Mina skill. Alvin glances over, curious about what happens next, and asks what she is planning to do once that terrible skill is finally gone. Melina gives him a warm, genuine smile. She tells him she desperately wants to form a proper, official party to go on real adventures with, something she just could not do alone. She is totally set on making it all the way to the top. Alvin looks off to the side with a small smile, finally agreeing that being in a party is actually a pretty great feeling. Then Melina looks down for a second, makes us wonder if Tito secretly wants a party. Alright, you and I are jumping right back in. Alvin smiles, knowing she felt lonely before, but he says, if you find real friends willing to follow you to the ends of the earth, then honestly, that is more than enough. Melina stares back, realizing she feels the exact same way, even if her Mina skill stays broken forever. They watch Tito and Kokoro happily marching ahead. Alvin smiles, truly hoping this whole wild adventure gives her the fresh start she deserves. Suddenly, Tito spins around, shouting back at them, asking when they are finally hitting those deeper dungeon floors. Alvin explains he is hunting specific monsters here that spam debuff moves. Tito instantly catches on he wants to test his mummy thief skill and see if those nasty effects actually jump to him. She pauses to think for a quick second, then flashes a massive grin, cheering that she is totally down to help them out. She sprints ahead, confidently declaring she will guide them straight to the boss room as payback for being so awesome to her. Tito charges ahead, but slips on solid ice and wipes out hard. She groans, face planted on the floor, wondering why this single spot is iced over. Kokoro just stands there blinking in total confusion, calling her name to check if she is okay. Melina just stares down at her with a blank expression, asking what happened. But wait, Alvin spots something moving. He screams for everyone to freeze. A massive frost chimera steps from the shadows. Lion, goat, and snake heads. Now, pay close attention, this is a high-level monster, and it should absolutely not be here. He realizes this massive beast was silently hiding, just waiting to ambush them perfectly. Kokoro glances over at him, clearly starting to panic about how dangerous this just got. Melina asks Alvin if they fight or flee. Meanwhile, Tito stays pinned to the ice, shaking, completely crushed as she thinks they have to retreat. She looks up with pure desperation in her eyes, begging them to wait. Watching them seemingly run off instantly triggers her darkest memory of being abandoned. Just like before, when her old team completely ditched her. Back then, they literally used her as bait, leaving her totally cornered by vicious monsters. She was just a kid, running for survival, hating every single second of that nightmare. Everything blurred into pure misery as she cried, wondering why life was so unfair, especially since she truly believed those awful people were actually her friends. All she wanted was real trust. While Alvin keeps shouting her name, Tito finally snaps under the pressure, screaming that it is totally game over. Kokoro leans down close, yelling her name, asking if she can hear her. The kid finally snaps back, looking totally lost and totally confused. Kokoro breathes a huge sigh of relief, admitting she was super worried. The young thief just stares up at her in absolute silence. She looks like she saw a ghost. Nearby, Alvin is fiercely holding the beast back, keeping the pressure off. Kokoro loudly thanks Alvin for the cover, turning right back to Tito. I know what you are thinking, they will definitely run, right? But Alvin yells back that if he were completely alone, he would absolutely flee. But with the squad they have, he knows they can win. He asks if she is ready. Tito just whispers to herself, completely stunned that they are actually staying for her. Kokoro points out that Melina has not stopped chanting magic for a single second. Tito looks, finally realizing that despite this crazy danger, nobody is running away from her. She grips her gear tight, realizing for the very first time, nobody is leaving her behind. The young thief finally locks in. She tells herself she can do this. She smirks, proudly telling the squad she is ready. But suddenly, the chimera leaps back, unleashing a floor-shaking, terrifying roar. Alvin recognizes the attack pattern instantly. That jump means a massive strike is coming fast. He screams a huge warning about an ice breath big enough to hit the backline mages. But Tito is already moving fast, asking if that is its best shot. She tells everyone, move. Alvin is blown away by her sudden confidence, wondering her plan. The beast roars, but Tito stands firm. Alvin just watches from the sidelines, completely stunned by this absolutely massive change in her attitude. Trust me, you are going to love this. She actually has a brilliant plan here. She glances back with a confident smirk, claiming she will handle guarding if things get sketchy. Right then, Kokoro casts a spell shouting that she is granting her freeze resistance for the clash. Stick with me here. You and I are about to watch this young thief do something absolutely wild. Tito closes her eyes, letting the magic settle. Then, she snaps them open, totally focused. All three monster heads lock right onto her. The lion and the goat glare from the front, while that creepy snake tail hisses from behind. Spotting a tiny opening, she shouts that she has got it, diving in like an absolute pro. Tito blurs past those massive front heads with insane speed, leaving the clumsy chimera totally struggling to keep up. She lands a flawless strike directly onto the snake face, catching the beast completely off guard before it reacts. The goat head lets out a furious screech as her heavy impact completely cuts off its massive breath attack. Alvin drops his jaw in pure shock, realizing that was not just dumb luck, but a flawlessly timed counter move. He just stares, wondering who could actually pull off a technical strike like that on purpose. Snapping back to reality, he yells for Melina to blast it with lightning magic right now. The powerful mage locks onto the beast, looking intensely serious. Letting immense power build up, she swings her staff with everything she has, unleashing a massive bolt of pure electricity. The epic lightning strike connects, creating a gigantic pillar of glowing light that completely swallows the beast. Alvin watches the smoke, totally blown away by her incredible firepower. But then, a sharp wind cuts right through the thick dust, leaving absolutely everyone shocked. Now pay attention here. The chimera stands right back up, and Alvin realizes they have not even dropped it yet. The massive chimera suddenly takes off into the air, desperately trying to get some distance from our heroes. Alvin quickly realizes it is going to be an absolute nightmare to hit up there. So, he tells the team he will take the lead. But before he can even step forward, Tito whispers a single word and launches herself right into the air like a rocket. She spins gracefully through the air with her shining knife, leaving a massive trail of glowing light while closing the gap. Alvin can barely keep track of her movements. He has never seen anyone move with that kind of crazy, unbelievable agility. Tito knows her timing is absolutely perfect, thinking to herself that this very next strike is definitely going to end the entire fight. She rips straight through the chimera, her shining blade smoothly carving through the heads of the monster in one fluid motion. The massive beast finally falls, collapsing into a huge cloud of heavy dust just as Tito expertly sticks the perfect landing. We both see this. Alvin and Melina just stand completely speechless. Nobody says a single word, unable to believe their eyes. Alvin just stares at her, blushing slightly while thinking about how unbelievably epic her shining knife actually is right now. Kakaru looks right up at Alvin, totally surprised by the specific spot he points out. Meanwhile, Melina processes the crazy fight, extremely impressed that her unique style has so many awesome moves and covers mid-range perfectly. Alvin stands in the heavy dust, catching his breath. Tito is looking even more completely wiped out, drenched in sweat and gasping for air. She clearly pushed herself to the absolute limit. But then someone praises her great job as Alvin starts walking off into the distance. Hearing this, Tito snaps her head around, looking completely caught off guard. Moving on, she stands alone, deeply thinking about how she used to believe all adventurers were just complete idiots. That is the massive lie she told herself for ages. Watching countless parties walk away, leaving her wondering why anyone with real friends would ever gamble their own lives on terrible info. But as she thinks that, she stops, suddenly realizing she might be wrong about everything this time. Tito remembers old stories of real adventurers who actually looked out for each other, even the ones with terrible skills. Exactly like those legendary, amazing parties she heard about back when she was much younger. Those were the kind of friends who shared everything, facing the absolute toughest monsters together through the good and the bad. Staring at the ground, Tito finally admits to herself she was secretly jealous of that bond. This entire time, she looks up at Alvin, standing right there alongside Kokoro and Melina, looking like a true team for the first time. She wonders if joining them is okay, telling herself this is just temporary. Anyway, Alvin completely breaks the serious mood, happily joking about stealing the kill. The group gathers around as he casually pulls up his shiny status screen to check their battle results. He casually mentions having zero clue the snake tail was the actual weak point. This makes Tito smile and blush slightly, teasingly telling him it definitely seemed that way. Alvin looks completely shocked, asking Tito if she seriously did not know the weak point before the fight. Tito just smiles and happily admits that it was actually her very first time seeing a chimera in person, which makes Alvin look pretty drained. He seriously wonders if her wild ability is just some kind of crazy, super specialized skill he has never seen before. Tito lacks a clear answer, simply saying she does not really know how to properly explain it. Makes you wonder, right? She simply asks if he does not just naturally feel it while fighting. Let's dive into it. With all his crazy experience, she figures he must be feeling the exact same vibe. But then Melina casually walks over, joining the crew and dropping a hint that their chat is super interesting. She directly asks Tito if she can explain exactly how she spots those hidden weak points in battle. Melina is thinking, if she masters this epic trick, she can start finding those enemy weak spots herself. So Tito awkwardly scratches the back of her head. She openly admits that explaining this wild instinct is actually super tough. She pauses for a second, rubbing her chin, trying desperately to find the right words to share her whole thought process. Suddenly, Tito turns dead serious. She claims you just have to consider the feelings of whoever actually created the monster. Once you do that, she explains, absolutely everything clicks, leaving Alvin and Melina looking completely lost and utterly confused. Alvin just keeps repeating the word creator, treating her like she is speaking absolute nonsense. Now watch this closely. Tito gets super philosophical, asking if they know the theory that their world is basically one giant simulation. She totally believes that if this crazy world was built by someone, an actual almighty creator simply has to exist. That is her mindset. She passionately explains that in a perfectly balanced world, an absolutely unbeatable monster or a totally broken, overpowered weapon just simply cannot possibly exist at all. She points out how bad guys always get tougher as you advance. Plus, defeated bosses just vanish into thin air, proving clear rules govern absolutely everything here. Alvin happily admits that even without knowing the deep reasons, their crazy reality definitely works like that. Tito flashes him a huge thumbs up. To her, the biggest takeaway is that their entire universe relies completely on perfect balance. Thanks to this cosmic balance, a monster's weak point is never a random mistake or tucked away, where nobody could ever spot it. Instead, we all see her point, right? She believes those openings show up exactly during massive attacks. This leaves Melina totally stunned, finally realizing that this insane gaming logic actually checks out. Tito looks super smug, bragging that this is an elite skill she mastered through endless battles, meaning she practically never misses her strike. Alvin laughs out loud, claiming it is either high-level skill or pure wild instinct. Tito gets absolutely blown away by that hilarious suggestion. Melina ponders it deeply. If this box garden theory is real, she feels pretty bad, knowing she could never spot those weak points like Tito naturally does. She casually adds that she probably would not even vibe with the almighty architect, who literally designed this whole strange world. She figures in a real treasure hunt, that annoying creator would just stash the epic loot where nobody could ever grab it. So what do we think? Tito sighs, reminding everyone this was never going to be easy.